Welcome to The Real World. My name's Cameron. Thank you so much for joining us on episode 70 of The Real World podcast. Today we're talking all about the MCU. Thank you so much for joining us here on the YouTube channel, The Real World. Make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified of all our videos. We're all about movies here, so we talk about movies all the time. We just did a review for the Marvels and for Loki Season 2. We've got all kinds of Blu-ray reviews, all kinds of fun stuff here. Today, we're talking about the MCU. We're going to go through the entire timeline of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Should be a lot of fun. But first, let's kick things off as we usually do with movie news. The actors' strike has finally ended. The actors came to an agreement with the studios. It has been a long time coming. They've been on strike for several months now. Shut down production in Hollywood, many movies and shows. They were no longer able to film. That has now ended. A lot of movies now have shifted release dates because many films have now been delayed. But the film industry is back on track. Enola Holmes 3 is now in development. Millie Bobby Brown is coming back to the role that she has originated. Henry Cavill is expected to return as well. It should be a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the first two films. I think they can be improved upon, though. So I'm very interested to see what they do next. Another third film in a franchise is coming. It's Now You See Me 3. It is in the works. Ruben Fleischer, director of Venom and the recent Uncharted video game adaptation, is going to be the director on this new movie. The third in the franchise, said to be a reimagining of the franchise. That makes me think that the cast probably won't return from the first two movies, which is disappointing because they were definitely the best part of those films. Not calling the sequel Now You Don't is perhaps the biggest oversight in cinematic history. Ridley Scott has announced he is making a Western after he finishes shooting Gladiator 2. This is really, really fun news for me as a big Western fan and a big fan of Ridley Scott. Very curious to see what he's going to do in that genre, which has mostly died off. Every once in a while, we'll get a new great Western. But having a director like this at the helm gets me really excited. The Legend of Zelda is being turned into a film. Finally, fans have been waiting for this for a long time. It is going to be a live action movie, not an animated film as many suspected after the success of Nintendo's recent Super Mario Brothers movie. This will be a live action film. Derek Connolly, who wrote the Jurassic World film, is going to write the movie. And Wes Ball, the director of the Maze Runner trilogy and the latest Planet of the Apes film, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which is set to come out next year, will be directing. So very, very interested to see who they end up casting there. John Wick is being turned into an anime. We don't know if this is going to be a film series or if this is going to be a TV or streaming series. We don't know where it's going to land. Lionsgate, of course, has the rights to this character. After that fourth film, they're clearly looking to continue the story in some way. I'm guessing this will be a prequel. I don't know if Keanu Reeves is coming back yet. They haven't announced any cast members, but I'm definitely interested because I'm a big fan of those movies. Venom 3 pushes its release date to November of 2024. So this film was originally slated to come out sometime in the summer. It is being pushed to late 2024. This will be the third and perhaps the final Venom film. Few new trailers were released. First for Avatar: The Last Airbender, the Netflix live-action adaptation of the animated Nickelodeon series. It looks leaps and bounds better than the live-action film that came out several years back. This looks to really honor and respect the animated series. Although the creators left this series, the creators of the original animated show are no longer attached. So that gets me a little worried, but the casting looks good. The visuals look great. It's a very short teaser. Looks like they are going to expand upon some things, which will be interesting. So I'm just very curious about this show. Cautiously optimistic, I guess is what you could say. Inside Out 2 released the teaser trailer this week. It surpassed all of Disney's trailers, the most viewed trailer of any Disney film, surpassing Frozen 2, which was a big shock to me. I thought this trailer was good. It got me intrigued and interested in what they're going to do next. Inside Out is not my favorite of the Pixar movies. I don't think it needed a sequel. But what they're going to do here looks very interesting, so I'm definitely intrigued. And my favorite trailer that released this week easily was Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. What a great looking trailer. Looks like it's bigger in scale. We're going to include the original cast back with the new cast, teaming up. Looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. Same tone, same humor, but it looks like it's going a little bit darker, perhaps, with the villain. So I'm very interested to see what the sequel is going to bring to this long-running franchise. Just a few anniversaries I wanted to mention. Disney's Robin Hood is celebrating its 50th anniversary this week, was released in 1973. This is one of my favorite Disney movies of all time. I'd probably consider this my favorite Robin Hood film adaptation ever. Great music, great characters, great voice acting. Just wonderful, wonderful, easy to watch movie with the whole family. Celebrating its 20th anniversary this week is Elf. Of course, everyone is getting in the holiday spirit. And so I had to mention Elf. This is a family favorite we watch every year, one of Will Ferrell's best. The late, great James Caan is wonderful in this, as is Ed Adner and Zooey Deschanel, Mary Steinbergen, all so many great actors in this, all do a great job. Jon Favreau directed this, who, of course, we'll be talking about today on the podcast, directed the Iron Man movies. So huge fan of Elf. That one I had to mention. And last but not least, we will be talking about this a little bit later, celebrating the 10th anniversary of Thor: The Dark World, the second Thor film, released back in 2013, directed by Alan Taylor, starring Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston, 10 years ago this week. All right, folks, well, that's it for movie news. Now it's time to jump into our main topic, a big topic today, the MCU. So what is the MCU? If some people have been living under a rock for the past 15 years, they may not know. So the MCU stands for Marvel Cinematic Universe. It is a shared continuity of films and series based on Marvel comic books, many created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. The MCU is the brainchild of one Kevin Feige, who is the president of Marvel Studios and producer on all 33 films and 9 series, with many more on the way. To date, the MCU has raked in $29.55 billion in box office revenue worldwide, making it the most successful film franchise of all time. That kind of sets our context here. We're just going to go through this in timeline order, a lot like we did with last week's Star Wars podcast. We're going to go through phase by phase. They kind of separated into these phases, kind of like a comic book is separated into volumes and chapters, kind of a cool way to do it. So kicking things off with me on the podcast today is Josh. How you doing, man?
Doing well, thank you.
And also joining me again is Ben.
Hey there, how's it going?
Doing great, doing great. All right, guys. Well, I know we're eager to dive into this. So like I said, we're going to start with the beginning. Phase 1, the Infinity Saga. This is a big, epic storyline across many films, series, shorts, all kinds of different things. So let's jump in. All right, guys. So phase 1 kicked off with Iron Man. Iron Man in 2008, directed by Jon Favreau, starring Robert Downey Jr. This is a film that just got so many people so excited. I feel like it was so fresh and different, very grounded, very realistic for a comic book movie. And it's just full of great humor, a lot of heart in there too. It's got great action scenes. It's well written. I just really enjoyed this movie when I saw it in theaters. And then, of course, that post-credit scene got everyone freaking out about the future of what they were setting up with Nick Fury and mentioning the Avengers. So that's where everything started. Then, of course, the next film in the timeline would be Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2 came out a couple years later, but it only takes place about 6 months after the events of the first Iron Man movie. We get more of Rhodey as War Machine. He becomes War Machine. We've got the introduction of Justin Hammer. Sam Rockwell in that role is my favorite part of the movie. Desperately want him to come back to that role. Then, of course, Black Widow was also introduced in this film, Scarlett Johansson in that role. So it did a lot for the universe building. They sort of kind of adapted the demon in a bottle storyline, where Tony's becoming very self-destructive. That's kind of what the storyline is here. So that's Iron Man 2. And then we come to the one-shot short film starring Clark Gregg as Phil Coulson, who became a fan favorite character very quickly after his small appearance in the first Iron Man and slightly larger role in Iron Man 2. There's a short film he starred in called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to Thor's Hammer. Thor was the film that was set up in the post-credit scene of Iron Man 2. And so that's a fun little short. If you haven't checked it out, it is on Disney Plus. You can watch that. And then, of course, we come to Thor. So Thor is, I think, a great film. I think it's underrated. This is a great kind of fish out of water story mixed with like a big grand Shakespearean epic fantasy film. It's just got so much great design, to it. The Norse mythology, the way they incorporated that. Hemsworth, I can't see anyone else as Thor. He's Thor. Same thing goes for Tom Hiddleston. He is Loki. He's a great actor and does a great job in this film as well. Kenneth Branagh, I think, was the perfect choice to direct this. He just did a really, really good job with it. So I'm a big fan of Thor. Then we come to The Incredible Hulk, which is certainly one of the more underrated MCU movies. I really like this movie more than pretty much anyone else I know. I think it's in my top 10 MCU movies. It's just a really cool, fun, fast-paced action film. I really wish they do a great job with the fugitive storyline, that whole it's like a chase the whole movie. I do wish though that Edward Norton had been given a little more creative freedom. He really wanted to dive into the psychological aspects of the character. And there's some deleted scenes on this Blu-ray I have that are really good that should have stayed in the film. So it was kind of some studio interference there. It was kind of a hard movie to make. Even Louis Leterrier, who directed it, was on a recent podcast, Happy, Sad, Confused. They had him on, and he talked about kind of the struggles of making that movie. And he wishes that, they had kind of been able to do a slightly more dramatic take on the character. But still a great cast. Liv Tyler, William Hurt, Tim Blake Nelson, all are great in this, and I just have a great time watching it. Going off of that, we go into another short film, a one-shot called The Consultant. Now, this really ties in the end scene of The Incredible Hulk with Iron Man 2, and what we see there with Coulson, and it kind of connects all of that a lot better. Then, of course, we come to what is my favorite MCU movie to this day. It is Captain America, the First Avenger. I am a huge fan of classic pulpy 1940s heroes. And so very much harkens back to Indiana Jones, The Rocketeer. That's why they got Joe Johnston to direct this, because he did The Rocketeer. He kind of is known for these kind of stories set in this time era. Chris Evans totally surprised me in this role. I'd only known him from Fantastic Four. And Human Torch is such a vastly different character from Steve Rogers, but he totally pulled it off. I was shocked by how well he did in this role. He just really made me root for him. Very endearing character. Love Haley Atwell as Peggy Carter. She's another one of my favorite characters. Their relationship, the way they build that over the course of this film, is really at the heart of especially this Infinity Saga, I feel like. So she does a great job. Tommy Lee Jones is one of my favorites. So him showing up, he's great in this as well. Really like Hugo Weaving as Red Skull. It's just got a great look and feel to it. Again, hearkening back to all those kind of classic adventure movies from the 40s. So that's one I'm a big fan of. One other thing I wanted to mention here is a series, which I don't think this is considered canon anymore, but it's called Agent Carter. I actually own the first season. I think it was 2 seasons. This was on ABC for a little while. And I really enjoyed it, especially the first season. I thought was really good, kind of giving us some closure with her character and what she experiences after the events of the First Avenger. First Avenger, by the way, I put it here in the timeline because even though a lot of it takes place in the 40s, we could have put it at the beginning. It is told technically in flashback because there's the bookend scenes that take place in present day when they dig Cap up. So that's why I put it there in the timeline. I think it leads very well into the Avengers, which of course is the next film in the franchise. The post-credit scene of Captain America is actually the trailer for this movie. So they were really trying to build anticipation for it, which they didn't really need to do, in my opinion. I mean, as far as I know, all the fans that I knew back then were just ecstatic about this film. We just couldn't wait to see what they were going to do, bringing all these characters together in this way from all these different movies and, different worlds and different time eras. I mean, it's just such a cool idea that we hadn't really seen in the films. In the comics, comic book fans are used to this kind of thing, but in the movies, it was just a totally new thing. And so I think this is a solid movie. I don't think it holds up as well as any of the other films in Phase 1, personally. Visually, it's kind of dull. Joss Whedon, he was from a TV background, and he kind of shoots things like it's for TV, a lot of close-ups and things like that. So to me, it's just not as visually interesting. The characters are kind of static. There's not a whole lot of growth with them really here. And so I'm not a huge fan of this movie as much as I was, but I think it's still a fun watch. It's an easy watch. So I had to mention as well, the short film that takes place right after this is called Item 47. That's a really fun one where basically a couple of criminals find some of the lost alien tech and they kind of use it to rob banks and stuff. It's just a fun kind of throwaway short, but it works really well. and it just kind of shows you the civilians and what they're kind of reacting to these things that are going on around them. So that's it for phase one. Josh, why don't you give us your thoughts on what you think of this first phase of the MCU?
I think both Iron Man and the second film are really strong. I think it kind of plagues all the Iron Man movies is the final climactic battle. It always feels like it's over too quick, especially the second one. But the rest of the movie is absolutely fantastic. And of course, Robert Downey Jr. is like perfect casting. It's one of those like 1 in a million castings over across movie history that is like you couldn't have got a more perfect person for that. I feel like I've seen all of these shorts except maybe The Consultant.
Okay.
I don't remember them all really well. But like you said, Thor is definitely underrated. I went back and watched that one, I think earlier this year. Yeah, it's just a lot of fun. It's just really, really cool. And I think especially with a lot of these phase one movies, because, where we are now in phase 5 and everything post Infinity Saga, I feel like not only are they kind of forgotten, but they're, like you said, they're underrated. And I think Thor is definitely one of those. Like I feel like Thor's movies as a whole, except maybe the last one, are really hard to rank, really hard to say which one's better. They're all really close. And that was something I didn't really realize about this film until rewatching it. Like, it is that good. The Incredible Hulk, I know you really like it. I'm okay on it. It's fine, whatever. I don't have much to say about that one. It is cool. And every once in a while I do feel myself like, oh, I should watch that again. I need to go back and watch that one. Captain America, the First Avenger is great film. Like you said, it just harkens back to those movies of that time. And anytime, you can fight Nazis is just a fun time. So definitely enjoy that part of it. And just the whole mythos and the themes of true virtue and everything like that is just really, really powerful. The Avengers, I think, still holds its weight a little bit. I think for me, it definitely has decreased in light of everything else. And like you said, it's a joining up movie, so it doesn't really have the individual character arcs that all these other individual movies do. And that's not really the purpose of it per se, at least not with that runtime. And maybe if you get 4 hours, you can squeeze a character in there, a la Zack Snyder's Justice League, but a few character arcs. But I still think it, like you said, it's a fun movie. It's just, it was iconic of the time and cinematic history in the making. Never before there's been team up movies, but not where they were all had their own movie. And then you brought all these A-list actors together. Like, that had never been done before. And so that was just, the first event movie in the MCU is just incredible. The last thing I'll say is Agent Carter. I didn't finish the second season. It just, for me, brought in aliens and everything just became ungrounded. And it just totally, if you didn't like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, you're not going to like season 2 of Agent Carter. So season 1 of Agent Carter is well worth watching, though. That one's really solid. And then, like you said, it's really cool to see the dynamics of, even though like she was right next to Cap in the thick of it, and she, like, you feel like people should owe her more respect than they give her. Like, when she goes back into the workplace, it's kind of like going on like camp as a kid, and then you come back and then you're like, after this experience, and then you're like back in the normal world and everything's the same as it was, and you're like, oh darn. So it kind of feels like that as she's coming back into the organization, and everyone's kind of treating her the same as if she didn't go on this great adventure and knows stuff and is skilled and everything. So yeah, I don't know. Season 1's worth checking out.
Definitely. I agree. Ben, give us your thoughts on phase 1.
I remember seeing the very first Iron Man film back in 2008, and upon watching the ending, I thought it broke the superhero genre for me, because I was so used to the secret identities and people staying separate from the rest of the world. Now here comes this guy, this huge narcissist, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist who can get away with almost anything, and then he reveals at the end, oh yes, I am Iron Man. I'm like, wait, you can't do that. That's not being a superhero. But that's, I didn't know at the time either. I didn't watch the post-credit scene, so I had no idea that Iron Man was going to be connected to this big, massive universe. I wasn't used to that. I'd never seen that before. And I think a lot of my friends at the time, we didn't grab attention to the MCU until much later when Thor and Captain America came out. But getting back to Iron Man, now watching it, yeah, Iron Man is a masterpiece. It amazes me that a majority of that film was improvised. There was barely a script while they were on set making that film. Jon Favreau did an incredible job making things feel the most grounded since Batman, in my opinion, for a superhero film. So used all these people with like these superhuman abilities. Somebody can shoot lasers out of their eyes, fly to the sky, summon things with a powerful ring. We didn't get that. We got a guy with a suit of armor who was ready to kick some serious butt and have great connections with people like Pepper Potts, Gwyneth Paltrow, Agent Coulson, played by Clark Gregg, and of course the person that we see at the very ending, which is Nick Fury, played by Samuel L. Jackson. So Iron Man 1, a great film, love it, great origin story, and I think in terms of like the future of the MCU, I really hope they still think about what made the first Iron Man film so special. Why do people go back to that film constantly, like I do? So that was Iron Man. Iron Man 2, I love that it goes back to form in a lot of ways, like the first one did, but I think my issue with Iron Man 2 is that it juggles way too many things compared to the first one. Instead of focusing on the origin story and the character of Tony Stark, even though it does focus a little bit on the character, it's not at focus. Most of it is juggling the Avengers and Whiplash and Justin Hammer. Everybody has different ideologies and goals that they want to achieve that feels a bit balanced. But I do like the inclusion of Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow. That was awesome.
Yes.
Finally seeing War Machine for the first time. I remember seeing War Machine in the Spider-Man animated series from the 90s, so I knew who War Machine was. I'm like, this is so cool. I can't wait to see War Machine. The recasting from Terrence Howard to Don Cheadle was a bit iffy for me at the time, but you know, the more movies I've watched, the more I've accepted this recasting. Like, okay, he's War Machine. I can accept that. So Iron Man 2, really, really cool. Then we go to Thor. When I first saw the trailer for Thor, it reminded me so much of a Jerry Bruckheimer produced film, you know, like Prince of Persia or Magician's Apprentice. Sorcerer's Apprentice, my apologies. It reminded me of a movie like that. It felt the most Disney to me. But I love how in-depth the character study was of Thor and Loki. It felt very Shakespearean. I love how it expanded the cosmic side of the MCU, because before all we focused on was just Earth and what was happening on the planet. To see that there were actually things beyond our planet, like aliens and gods and demons and frost giants, I found that very interesting and added a lot of mythology into the mix of the MCU. So yeah, the casting of Chris Hemsworth, Tom Hiddleston, superb. Natalie Portman is pretty cool. I don't know if she was having fun at the time when she was playing that character in that particular period of the MCU, but she was good. I love Stellan Skarsgård. I think Stellan Skarsgård is great everything that he's in. Kate Dennings was a nice touch. Anthony Hopkins was brilliant. I love how it continues to bring in new characters that we haven't seen in the MCU yet, like Jeremy Renner's Hawkeye. That was pretty cool. Nobody talks about his 5-minute cameo in the film, but I still remember it. I think it was a great introduction to his character, unlike how we see him in the Avengers, which I'm going to discuss later on. So yeah, Thor was great. Great character development. I would have liked it if they had a bit more action, but on a character standpoint, which I think is the most important thing when it comes to making a movie or even writing a script, yes, it's a win. Thor's a definite win, underrated, and should be cemented in people's hearts if it hasn't been yet. So that is Thor. Captain America, the First Avenger. I agree with you, Cameron. I love the 1940s pulpiness. I can relate so much to a guy with conservative values and the drive to do good, even in the midst of troubled elements lurking about. I love Hugo Weaving's performance as the Red Skull. I know everyone remembers him as Lord Elrond from Lord of the Rings, but here as Red Skull, a very memorable performance as Red Skull, on par with perhaps Tom Hiddleston's Loki. Like, I thought he was a really good villain. I wish we got more of him, of Hugo Weaving, but I understand, you know, business is business. Some actors want to do other things later on in their life. But yeah, I love how Captain America: The First Avenger is a period piece. It takes place in World War II. You get to see a lot of visual frames, kind of like an Indiana Jones film, which I thought was cool. And I love how in the ending it leads directly into the first Avengers film, which I still think to this day is a phenomenal piece of work. It may not stand as well cinematically, but I think just character-wise and finally seeing all these beloved characters meet up, start a couple fights, and then inevitably assemble to take on a formidable foe like Loki. It was incredible. That shot where their camera's going at 180 degrees, you see them all like gearing up, ready for a fight against the Chitauri. I will never forget the experience I had in the theater with my uncle, because I was so giddy when I saw that. It was incredible. Phase 1, powerful period of the MCU. Very experimental, but by the end, they achieved what they wanted to achieve.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of long for the days of Phase 1. I find myself more and more like longing for this kind of like very individual films that have their own voice. Like, I feel like they were a little more director driven
they were
back
for
then,
sure.
and really did a great job of introducing new characters and new places, and then bringing it all together in a really cool way. So yeah, big fan of Phase 1. Definitely got me excited. All right, let's jump into phase 2. Kicked off with a TV series called Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Clark Gregg, again, beloved character, killed off in the first Avengers movie. That's the one they were avenging. And Nick Fury was like, nope, I'm not having it. He's coming back. And so he brought him back. And it's a cool show. I really think it just kind of went off the rails a lot, like a lot of shows do. It just got kind of too crazy and confusing. So I think I abandoned it after like season 4 or something. But first season was solid. I also have the second season, which I think was really good. It tied in with some big things that happened in phase 2, which we'll talk about in a moment. So just wanted to mention that. But after Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. debuted, tied directly into Iron Man 3. So Iron Man 3 was the film that came out next after the Avengers grossed $1 billion. This one also grossed $1 billion because people were like, what's going on with Iron Man next? What's he doing? This was the biggest character in movies at the time. So they, brought in Shane Black to write and direct, who has a very unique voice. His humor really comes through. It's kind of a darker tone slightly, yet it still has a lot of the humor. It's almost like a Bourne or a Bond type of a film where he's kind of like having to go back to basics and like, use his mind again to kind of, work out of these situations. Has a great twist. I'm a huge fan of the Mandarin twist. I don't know what you guys think. I just really like that moment. I think it totally works. I just adore Ben Kingsley in that role. He's hilarious. So big fan of Iron Man 3. I think it works really well. Then, of course, we go to the one-shot All Hail the King, which shows us what happens next with Trevor Slattery. We get a brief moment with Justin Hammer as well. So that's a fun little short film you can check out, which ends up tying into a film that we'll get much later. We'll talk about that then. Then, of course, we have Thor: The Dark World. Thor: The Dark World is the sequel to Thor. It's a cool movie. It's grown on me a lot. This is one of those movies that, I didn't initially adore. I was kind of like, the villain's kind of weak and the plot's kind of weak. But I think the Thor and Loki stuff works really well. Those two characters are great in this film. The relationship dynamic is excellent. There's some really emotional moments, again, that will tie in to some later movies we'll talk about. So Thor: The Dark World, cool. It's not my favorite. It's not like ranked super high, but I have grown to appreciate it a little bit more, especially the production design and look of the film, I think is really good. Then, of course, we'll move from that into Captain America, the Winter Soldier. Now, Winter Soldier just kind of blew me away. I mean, this movie still, I think, holds up super well. It's very well written. It's tightly plotted. It's got this conspiracy thriller angle that's just really cool and unique for the genre. So I like this a lot when these superhero movies, and that was kind of Kevin Feige's idea, was like, let's take a film genre that we know and mix it in with a comic book kind of movie. So this thing does that really well, and Captain America works really well in this kind of genre. Scarlett Johansson, I think, probably gives her best performance in this movie also as Black Widow. Their relationship is great. The way that's developed is so good. Sam Jackson's Nick Fury, I think, is also at his best here. He's got a great major role to play here, which is really cool. We hadn't really seen, he'd kind of been in smaller roles pretty much until this point. And then, of course, Bucky coming back. Sebastian Stan just really gives a knockout of a performance here. Playing a lot of layers and just doing a lot of interesting things. Robert Redford, of course, shows up, who's one of my favorite actors of all time, as the villain, which was so cool. The whole Hydra plot, just all of it works really well. The action sequences are great. This one really stands up very well. Then, of course, we come to one of my favorites, Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, this one holds a special place in my heart. I've told this story on the podcast previously. This is where my wife and I really hung out for the first time, was going to see this movie. This kind of not where we met, but it's like where we kind of started hanging out. So holds a special place in my heart for that reason. On top of that, it's just a great movie. James Gunn, another very unique voice as a director and a writer. Just weird. He's very offbeat. His humor, he's all about these kind of weirdos and this makeshift family that they create. Great soundtrack. The way they used the music in the story was great. So huge fan of Guardians of the Galaxy. It stands up to me still to this day as one of the better ones. Great kind of sci-fi adventure. Here in the timeline, we actually have an I Am Groot series. So there's the I Am Groot short series, which is a lot of fun. If you haven't checked those out, I would recommend that. And then we come to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. It just takes place a few months later. They're a unified team. and they meet Ego, played by Kurt Russell, who does a great job in this film. I'm a big fan of that performance. We introduce Manus, Pom Klementieff, really, really, really good. I really like her comic timing. I really like her just attitude. Her personality is so great. She's a great character. I like the Nebula and Gamora stuff in this movie. That I think is some of the strongest stuff in the film. Their relationship and the way that develops is really good. More great visuals, tons of visual effects in this movie, but they all look really good. And another great soundtrack. So big fan of Guardians 2 as well. Then we come to the Netflix series. So these technically aren't canon anymore in the timeline of the MCU, but I had to mention them just because this was such a big deal. Kind of Netflix producing these series, which were much more mature, much more kind of R-rated, you know, in the violence and kind of things like that. Daredevil kicked it off, and to this day, I think it's one of the best superhero series ever made. Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio just do a phenomenal job in that series. So yeah, I was a big fan of that show. Then we come to Avengers Age of Ultron. Now, Avengers Age of Ultron, I think, is a bit of a mess because, again, we're dealing with a lot of characters. They're trying to introduce a lot of new characters and doing a lot with the storyline. But I think visually, this movie's a lot better than the first Avengers movie. I think it looks incredible. I think the visual effects are great. The cinematography, the lighting is incredible. Some of these shots are just very memorable, what they were able to do here. So I do like the movie. I especially like it because Hawkeye is my favorite Avenger, and he gets a great kind of subplot with him and his family and all of that stuff. I thought was just really good. Scarlet Witch, I really like Elizabeth Olsen. I just don't, she was given a lot to do here, enough in the script. Same thing with Quicksilver. I wish he was given more to do. James Spader, I do like as Ultron. He wasn't comic book Ultron. You know, Ultron in the comics, he's the one that defeats the Avengers. I mean, he's like one of their ultimate bad guys. So he was kind of, you know, didn't quite live up to the hype of Ultron for me, but still a movie that I like. Again, it's just not one of my favorites. And then we end with one of my favorites. Actually, this one's ranked pretty high for me. Ant-Man. Big fan of Ant-Man. This one, again, it kind of goes back to phase one of that whole, like, just introducing this corner of the universe we haven't seen with just a small scale story about a dad and his daughter. Basically, it's a daddy-daughter story, which I'm target audience for that because I have 3 little ones. Yeah, this is just great. It's just great fun. It's perfect tone, just really silly and kind of goofy, but has some great action scenes, really cool visuals. What they did with the shrinking was, I think, just excellent. So big fan of this. Paul Rudd was well cast. Michael Douglas is great in this as well. I really like Evangeline Lilly. Peyton Reed just did a really good job with this movie. So big fan of that one. Yeah, phase 2 for me, I think it's got highs and lows like a lot of these phases do. But I think they did a good job kind of continuing the story in an exciting way. So big fan of that one. Yeah, definitely liked a lot of those movies. Josh, you want to give us your thoughts on phase 2?
I know, like you said, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. isn't really canon anymore, but I feel like for me, it's kind of the same thing. I kind of fell off after a while. I think it was actually the end of season 3 as far as I've seen. I don't think I saw season 4, but I mean to go back and finish those. I kind of fell off every TV show I was watching at that time. But I think some of the strongest parts of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was just the way that it tied so well into the movies. Like you talked about especially with The Winter Soldier, and I think with The Dark World as well, you just saw how that affected the organization of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I think we take that for granted now, actually, because they've kind of straightened it out a little bit more. But, you know, with everything put in the multiverse saga, as far as what the organization that Nick Fury's a part of looks like, it's all very messy and not very, like, we don't really know how any of it works. What's the organizational structure of any of it? Who's in charge, blah, 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 et cetera. So I think that's one thing that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. did really well, was just keeping us apprised of that. And also another really strong point, I think, was the end of season 3. It was just that there's a whole sacrificial forgiveness arc that is just really, really strong and just points back to Christ brilliantly. So I thought that was really, really cool. Moving on from there, I think overall this phase is pretty much just as strong, maybe a tad under phase 1. I think Iron Man 3, people don't like it for the twist angle. I enjoy the twist. I just wish they twisted it back, which they kind of do in the short, but then it's like Shang-Chi later doesn't pan out the same way. So I don't know. I wish, kind of like you were saying with Ultron, he didn't like really live up to being that threatening of a villain, at least to the degree that he is in the comics. I feel like Mandarin, being one of Iron Man's main villains, didn't live up to that either. Thor: The Dark World, I'm a huge defender of. I love this movie from the first time I saw it, and I still love it. The huge part, the main kicker being just Thor and Loki's relationship, which you mentioned. And I think that's like the brightest part here. It's just really good. It's some of the best pre-Loki series, some of the best Loki stuff we get, especially with him and Thor, and just it's just such a really strong part of that movie. Captain America: The Winter Soldier is in my top 5 still. Like you said, it's just perfect. There's so many elements and they all work perfectly. And like, I can't say anything bad about this movie. It has that, like you said, that conspiracy born feel to it. And as we're going back through all of these and just kind of pointing out the genres and the director's visions, like I feel like you said, we really need more of this. And I think we're starting to get that with the Marvels, hopefully. I think that's a step in the right direction, which we'll obviously talk about later. I think that just, I don't know, it makes it simpler. I don't know if that's the right word, simpler, but like, oh, just take the genre and insert it into the movie. And it gives it a unique feel. Even if the director necessarily doesn't have a unique vision, the fact that we're imbuing it with a specific type of genre just naturally gives it a different feel, which is really cool, instead of, cookie cutter all the same time. I Am Groot is really fun. Guardians, I think it's almost as good as the first movie. I think it's the weakest of the trilogy, but it's still really fun time, really good ride. Daredevil, like you said, is the best of the Netflix series. Is I think the strongest thing about all these Netflix series is, and I didn't finish the last season of a few of them, but is the villains. And I think that's the thing that shines the most here, is just like every single one of these shows has a fantastic villain and a very gruesome part in each season. But just like such compelling, probably some of the best villains in all of superhero-dom. And I think they're a bit underrated in that respect. I know Kingpin obviously probably gets the credit he deserves, but I don't think the rest of them quite get it. Excited that Daredevil and Charlie Cox and Kingpin and everyone's coming back, but that's later. Avengers: Age of Ultron. I don't know. It is such a mixed bag, because part of me, like you said, was pointing out like the filmmaking aspect of it. It is better. It's on another level above that of Avengers, but it also feels like it's not as good as Avengers. And I think that is because, like you said, it's very messy. There's a lot going on, almost too much going on. And obviously great parts. The humor is there. Language with Cap calling that out in the beginning of the film, like just the way everyone's kind of in the flow of a team now. And so just kind of like that camaraderie and banter is really great to see and strong among the characters.
The party scene.
The party scene, yes, all the little
good.
quips in there. That's really fun. I really like James Spader as Ultron. I think he was a fantastic voice. I still quote and send the gif of "I can't physically throw up in my mouth." I still use that. I don't know. It's just a really great story, and then it works perfectly with getting Vision and just seeing Jarvis, this character that we can't see, that we just love this whole time, and then we see him imbued in a character that's just really cool. And Paul Bettany does such an amazing job with that. I would probably, looking back on it, like if I rewatched it, I'm sure I would enjoy it a lot more now than maybe I did even at the time, or since the last time I've seen it. But ending phase 2 with Ant-Man, it's so interesting because they do this later too, which I'll talk about. But I feel like, I don't know, maybe coming off of this big movie, and like you said, we're focusing back in on one story, kind of isolated from everything else. That just it's like a palate cleanser from the big event film that we saw before we get into the next thing. And like you said, the cast is incredible. They do such a good job with the heist genre being the main thing here. And it's just a fun movie. Is it the best Marvel movie? I don't think so, but it's definitely a solid film. And I think all the Ant-Man films are a little underappreciated. I think they're all really well done. They're solid films, and they're just all really fun, good time. So, and I think that's definitely key here. And the score, at least the main theme, is really fun as well. Like, feels like you're on a roller coaster. Yeah. So those are my thoughts on phase 2. If I could pick a favorite film, which I forgot to do for the first phase, I would definitely say it's The Winter Soldier. Phase 1, probably Iron Man. But with that, I'll turn it over to you then.
Okay, I have a lot to say about phase 2, but I'm going to remain as concise and clear as possible for you guys so I don't bore you to death. So, chronologically, I will begin with Thor: The Dark World, which takes place about a year after the first Avengers film. It was directed by Alan Taylor, who is from Game of Thrones, if you're familiar with Game of Thrones. Upon seeing it for the first time, I thought it was cool, but the more I think about it, just because he tried to make things look more like Game of Thrones doesn't ensure that it's going to be a success, and that's what happened with Thor: The Dark World. I thought the dialogue was very dry. Some of the performances were a bit iffy. Thor's arc was repetitive to the first one, so he doesn't really grow as a character, except for Loki. It feels like it acknowledged what's been going on with Loki previously in the Avengers film as well as the first Thor film. So I thought his arc was really, really cool. I liked the part when Thor and Loki bond. Every time when you see Thor and Loki actually having a scene of drama together, it's fun. It's cool to watch. But outside of that, I thought the villain was forgettable. And I felt bad for Christopher Eccleston because he's a pretty good actor if you've given him good stuff. But anyhow, Thor: The Dark World was cool. It was darker. We went to new places. We were introduced to another Infinity Stone called the Ether, like the Tesseract before in the Avengers film. We were introduced to a character called the Collector at the end of the film, which made me speculate when we were going to see this character again and why is he interested in all these 6 Infinity Stones? What's so special about these stones? Which we do find out later on in another film, but staying chronologically, what happens after Thor: The Dark World is Iron Man 3. And I love the PTSD arc that Tony Stark experiences after his events from the first Avengers film. It's obvious he would have severe anxiety attacks, and he would worry about the safety of those he cares about, like Happy Hogan, Rhodey, Pepper. So I love that he goes on this journey that turns him from a superhero into James Bond, and he has to rely on his own skill and wit to save the day. So it was really, really cool, very refreshing. Found it kind of weird that it wasn't Jon Favreau directing this time, but still Shane Black did a pretty decent job. The Mandarin plot twist was a bit iffy for me at the time, but I've forgiven it since we've gotten the All Hail the King short, as well as a follow-up film which connects to Iron Man 3, but it isn't about Iron Man, a movie that I will talk later on during this podcast. So yeah, Iron Man 3 was really, really cool. It was fun, full of holiday spirit, and it takes place during the holidays too. So if you're trying to watch some Christmas movies to get ready for the holiday season, I recommend Iron Man 3. So that's Iron Man 3. Now, following Captain America: The Winter Soldier, I agree, is one of the best MCU movies to date. It's fantastic, mostly because it was the first time Marvel actually experimented with genres. Like, this was turned from a 1940s pulp action serial into a 70s political thriller. And I just love the stakes. I love the plot twist reveal that S.H.I.E.L.D., the big organization responsible for assembling the Avengers, actually happens to be the very thing that Cap was trying to dispose of in World War II, Hydra. One of the greatest plot twists I've ever seen since Darth Vader revealed to Luke that he was his father in Star Wars. Really, really cool. And I love how it just changes Steve Rogers' arc from trying to trust the new system into turning against it, and for good reason too. So it was cool to see S.H.I.E.L.D. burn to the ground alongside aid from Black Widow, and the Falcon was glorious. I loved it. And I couldn't forget, subtitle for this movie is called The Winter Soldier, so Sebastian Stan returning as Bucky Barnes as the Winter Soldier I found to be a lot of fun. It was exciting to finally see him survive and actually have a future within this new world. And the fact that Steve Rogers really isn't alone anymore. Even though Peggy Carter assured him in the first film that he will never be alone. I'm like, yeah, he has somebody now. Or he could look for someone who might understand his pain. So a lot to love about Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Shifting from Earth setting to the cosmic setting, Guardians of the Galaxy blew my mind. I was so... How do I describe it? It felt like a combination of Indiana Jones and Star Wars and Goonies. And everything I liked about the 80s was in this movie, not just for its movies, but also the retro music that James Gunn, writer and director and genius of filmmaking nowadays. Great cast. I liked the villain, a bit one-dimensional, but he was enough to make the other characters compelling enough to take him down. Rocket Raccoon and Groot are this generation's Han Solo and Chewie. Hope you all know. I love the actually was the first time Dave Bautista really proved himself to be a dramatic actor besides being a WWE wrestler. So I thought he was really, really cool. I loved the aesthetic, the visuals. I can't forget Michael Rooker as Yondu. He's awesome. I don't know if you've ever seen, you guys have probably seen The Walking Dead. I've known him from The Walking Dead. He's only in the first 3 seasons of the show, but he plays a really good part in the show. So yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy, breath of fresh air. And it was nice to finally explore more of the cosmic side of the MCU besides our adventures with Thor. This was a story that could stand on its own 2 feet, but I liked how it connected things to the bigger picture in terms of talking about what the Infinity Stones have that make them so powerful, as well as seeing Thanos in the background, who we haven't seen since the first Avengers film. So it did set up a lot of promising ideas that would be expanded upon in the future. So that's Guardians of the Galaxy. I can continue on chronologically with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 because it takes place a couple months later. And although it may not be the cosmic roller coaster that the first Guardians was, I appreciate the emotional depth it delivered to me as a movie. And I think it was around that time, I started to actually care more about character development than just seeing action and glorious visual imagery all the time. Sometimes it's just okay, and it's healthy to actually just hear people have one-on-one conversations about what they think about things of life and how they're moving forward.
Yeah.
I love how it explores Star-Lord's origins. I love how it explores Drax and Mantis's brother and sister relationship. I love the bond that Rocket and Yondu have on the Ravager's ship, and Yondu telling Rocket, I know exactly who you are. You're exactly like me. And to see Rocket finally break apart for the first time, which we didn't see. I didn't think we really saw that in the first Guardians film, other than Rocket losing Groot. We never really got to see him, who he was, and what he regrets doing in his life. And that's something that would carry on with the third Guardians film, which we would not be getting for another 6 years. Jeez. So a long wait between two Guardians films, but yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 may not have been better than the first one, but it was definitely deeper, filled with a lot of emotional beats, and for the most part, it was a very fun movie. Definitely one of the better sequels within the Marvel MCU, better than the follow-up movie that I'm going to talk about, which was Avengers Age of Ultron. And as much as it was cool to see Earth's Mightiest Heroes reunite again and take on a villain like Ultron, I felt as if, like Iron Man 2, which came couple of years before, it was juggling far too much, and that it lost focus around the end of it. I didn't know what I was supposed to be focusing on. The Avengers defeating Ultron, Thor's quest for the Infinity Stones, or just people's perception of where the MCU is. I had no idea where to focus on, but it was okay. James Spader's performance of Ultron, I know it's been pulled apart, but the way I think about it is Ultron was trying to insult and mimic his creator. So I assume that's the approach that James Spader went, because he sounded, a lot of his mood swings and his beats were very reminiscent of Tony Stark in the way he was in the first Iron Man film. Kind of similar. A little bit of a Shakespeare whiny teenager approach. I know people call him Teenage Ultron because he acts like a whiny teenager the entire movie, but he's cool. I can't forget Paul Bettany finally having a cool role to play, because in the past he only played this AI named Jarvis who would assist Tony Stark in the Iron Man suit. Now they actually gave him a body and an Infinity Stone in his forehead, and he becomes the Vision, which I thought was genius, because I can't think of anybody else who could have played the Vision the way he did. Well composed, articulate, and logical, yet through it all, although he's a robot, you can tell that there's something different about him. He's trying to understand emotion, which is an arc that pans out into the later films and projects that he's in. He's just trying to understand emotion and how it works. One more thing, I love the inclusion of Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, particularly Scarlet Witch. It was a pity the way they handled Quicksilver, because I would have liked to have seen a future with him, but for Scarlet Witch, it was about time we got more female characters into the mix. So I'm happy that they chose someone like Elizabeth Olsen, who was awesome. They set her up for a promising future ahead. So that was Avengers Age of Ultron. It was so-so. A lot of juggling, but in the end, it was cool to see a brand new roster of Avengers led by Captain America. And you see him about to say the famous line, Avengers A, and then immediately cuts off. I thought that was genius. Not time to use that line just yet. I forgive them for that. So yeah, that's Avengers Age of Ultron. Then we go into the Netflix shows, and although I haven't seen every single series, I have seen at least the first series of each character, and I will say out of them all, definitely go with Daredevil. Daredevil's arc is phenomenal. Although it is dark and brutal and not for kids, I love the dynamic between Matt Murdock as well as Wilson Fisk, who's the Kingpin. I can't think of any other actors who could have played the roles. They were perfect. And it brings me so much joy that those actors are returning to play those characters, even though they may not be playing that version of the character. Brand new timeline. But I highly recommend Daredevil. Jessica Jones is cool. I mean, for the sake of David Tennant, if you're a David Tennant fan, he's awesome in that show. Luke Cage was interesting. I will say, you already know who Luke Cage is in Jessica Jones. So if you want to get into Iron Fist, it's okay. No, I mean, Defenders, it's okay to skip Luke Cage, but remember to watch Iron Fist, because Iron Fist has a lot of things that bleed into the Defenders. And the Defenders series, it's okay, but afterwards we get Daredevil Season 3, which is masterful. And then finally, leaving Netflix, going into the last film of Phase 2 is Ant-Man. I really liked Ant-Man. I thought it brought back style, introduced a new core to the MCU, which we haven't seen before, and had some of the best comedic moments from the MCU. My particular has to be Michael Pena's Louis backstories. I think those scenes were the best. I think going smaller sometimes can bring a better effect when it comes to a movie. To keep things small and personal, but let the stakes be as grand and wide is beneficial instead of focusing on big epic explosions all the time. So I thought Ant-Man was very unique. I love the casting of Paul Rudd, Michael Douglas, and Evangeline Lilly were awesome. I love I'm probably in the minority of this. I really liked Yellow Jacket. He reminded me a lot of Lex Luthor. Like that's the Lex Luthor I envisioned besides Bryan Cranston. He had that Lex Luthor vibe, which I liked. So yeah, Ant-Man was a really cool capper. And collectively, Phase 2 may not have been as strong as Phase 1, but I appreciate the genre explorations as well as the expansion of things in the MCU, which we have not seen before. So, still a win.
Excellent thoughts, guys. All right, let's jump right into Phase 3. Phase 3 kicked off with Captain America Civil War. Civil War was the big crossover event, basically another Avengers movie. So, this one is all about the Sokovia Accords, which I actually have here. Came in my box of Phase 2, which is pretty cool. I have not signed them, which tells you what side I'm on. But that was a great film. It's a great story. I really like the story they told. It's very emotional. It deals with all these characters. The way they brought them into the story felt very natural to me. So it was another win for the Russos. I think it's visually a little flat, honestly. I think they tried too much to continue the style from Winter Soldier. When you're dealing with characters like Spider-Man, Iron Man, Vision, all these like big, larger than life characters, it doesn't really fit in that world. So I feel like they should have expanded it visually a little bit, used a different color palette. It's just a little bit weak for me on that end, but the story is really strong. So that one I do enjoy. Then we get two short films with Thor called Team Thor, kind of funny little shorts telling us what Thor's up to while all of the Civil War madness is going on. And then we get Black Widow. Black Widow is probably my least favorite MCU movie, honestly. I think the story is the weakest. The characters are the weakest. I think the action is just kind of flat and kind of weightless, especially in that end sequence with all the falling debris. It's just like, it makes no sense. It's just kind of ridiculous. Too much CGI. Kind of all of my problems with these types of movies I find in Black Widow, unfortunately.
Oh man!
And it was just too late for her character at this point. I mean, this is when it was released, it was after Endgame, and so if it had come out right after Civil War, I probably would like it a little bit better. But unfortunately, wasn't a huge fan of Black Widow, but I was a big fan of Black Panther. Black Panther, directed by Ryan Coogler, just blew me away. I mean, this guy is telling a story that's very personal to him, you can tell. And I think that shows in the storytelling. Chadwick Boseman, who we lost way too early, is brilliant here. What a great actor, just delivering such a great performance. Also great in this is Michael B. Jordan. One of my favorite villains, Killmonger, is such a good performance. Really has a great point of view, and you can kind of sympathize with him. It's really, really good. So great casting, great visuals, another new place. Wakanda was a very different place from any place we'd ever seen before. So I'm a big fan of that movie. We also get Spider-Man Homecoming. As I mentioned, Spider-Man debuts in Civil War, played by Tom Holland. Probably my favorite actor to play the character. I just think he plays the youthful high school Peter Parker really well. And he plays Spider-Man really well. He's kind of a character that's very much learning how to become a superhero. And I like the way that they tied it in with Iron Man. It set it apart from the other Spider-Man movies that we had. So I'm a pretty big fan of Homecoming. It's a cool kind of small scale, he's trying to be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, even though he wants to be an Avenger. It's a cool storyline for him. And Michael Keaton's great in it as Vulture. He's one of the best Spidey villains I think we've ever had. So did enjoy that. Then we get Doctor Strange. Now, Doctor Strange, another very unique corner of the MCU, the mystical side, right? The magic and all that, the sorcerers and all of that. So it's very different. Visually stunning. I find the movie to be just breathtaking visually, what they're doing there with the mirror dimension and with Dormammu and all these different weird things that they have going on that I think really stay with me. Story is fine. I don't think it's a great story. I think it's interesting. I think Benedict Cumberbatch brings a lot to the role. Rachel McAdams is criminally underused in the film, as is Mads Mikkelsen. But Tilda Swinton is a standout. She's great in this. So that one I do enjoy quite a bit. Then we go into kind of the another wacky element of the MCU and Thor Ragnarok, where Taika Waititi came in and just shook up the whole franchise of Thor. I mean, it's such a departure from Dark World. I mean, it's something totally different, very bright and colorful, very silly, but yet it still has some emotional moments that work. I feel like a couple of them are undercut by comedy that, you know, kind of takes me out of it a little bit, but I think this movie works generally. I think there's some really good action sequences in it, like the way they utilized Hulk a lot. That was fun. So we also get a short film with the character Daryl um, called Team Daryl. Grandmaster, played by Jeff Goldblum, returns in this short film, which is pretty fun. So you can check that out right after you watch Ragnarok. Then, of course, we go into what this has all been building to. This is Avengers Infinity War, huge crossover event. Not only all of the Avengers, but the new characters like Doctor Strange and the Guardians of the Galaxy come in, and Black Panther. And it's just an epic event. I mean, this movie was highly anticipated, and I think it really delivers. I really do. I think it's a well-made movie. I really just am amazed that they made a movie about a villain, even though it's called Avengers. It should be called Thanos Infinity War, because it's a movie, 100%. I mean, this is really showing us him, his backstory, what he's all about. Josh Brolin just knocked it out of the park. Incredible motion capture performance. He did a great job there with that. So yeah, I'm a pretty big fan of Infinity War. To me, it's kind of half a movie. That ending is such a downer that I'm kind of like, I'm like ready to turn on Endgame as soon as it's over. So that takes away from it a little bit for me, but not too significantly. Then we go into Ant-Man and the Wasp, the sequel to Ant-Man. It's a fun movie. It's kind of forgettable for me. It's fine. I enjoy it. I enjoy the comedy of it. The shrinking tech is used well. The giant Pez dispenser, that stays in my mind. That moment. The cars shrinking. There's fun stuff they do with it. It's just not super impactful for me emotionally or visually. There's nothing that really stands out and makes me go, I go back to that one a lot. So then we go into Captain Marvel, and I kind of feel similarly about Captain Marvel. I think this is a movie that it's okay. It's kind of a fun sci-fi adventure. There's some interesting elements to it. I don't think any performance really stands out, maybe other than Ben Mendelsohn as Talos. He's pretty good in it, but you know, Nick Fury, I felt was kind of just okay there, even though I like Sam Jackson in the role. Going back to the 90s, it felt like they're kind of trying to shove 90s stuff down your throat, like Blockbuster, and she's listening to this song, and this soundtrack moment happens, and it kind of tried to use like Guardian stuff, but it just didn't do it in a cohesive way. It was like they were trying to draw elements from other things that were better, and just didn't do it in a way that was really compelling for me. And underusing Jude Law in that way, I feel like too, was kind of a crime against cinema.
Yes.
You know, it's fine. Again, it kind of introduces a cool new character and does some things I like. There's certain relationships in it that I like. With Monica Rambeau and different things like that I think are interesting. And then we come to Endgame. Endgame is the ultimate MCU movie. I mean, it's got everything coming together. We're back with our original Avengers teaming up again to take down Thanos and to, you know, right the wrongs of the past. So it's a crazy time travel film. There's a lot going on here. It's a 3-hour movie. I really like this one a lot because it's, you know, bringing the character arcs to a close. Iron Man, you know, makes the ultimate sacrifice. Steve finally gets to have his happy ending with Peggy. Hawkeye is great in this. You know, his whole character arc there is great. Bringing Black Widow's story to an end. All of it was just really effective for me. Very emotional. I remember being very emotional watching this in the theater for sure. One of the few films I've cried at the theater. So yeah, it's very good. It definitely does everything that you're kind of hoping it to do, and does it very well. So those are my thoughts on Phase 3. Ben, why don't you take it away with your thoughts on this phase?
So Captain America's Civil War, we finally got another event film again. And like you said, I know a lot of people consider this Avengers 2.5, but for me, I still think it manages to remain, for the most part, Steve Rogers' story, because we first see him in World War II, debating if he wants to take up this shield and actually be a hero instead of this propaganda man. He doesn't want to be propaganda man. He wants to be a good person, like Dr. Eskin told him that he believed he could be, because he had respect for power, because he was a weakling growing up. So And I love that, he just got off of Winter Soldier, where S.H.I.E.L.D. was revealed to be Hydra, so of course he's against U.S. governmental mandates now. So when the U.S. government walks to his door and tells him, oh yeah, the Avengers are going to be supervised now, he's against it. Like, no, I don't want to find out one day that I've been working for the wrong people. I'm not going to do that. The only person I can trust is myself. Yeah, it's a great film. I love how it also incorporates Tony's story as well, even though this is meant to be Cap's story, not Iron Man 4. Thought that was cool. The balancing acts of the Avengers, it's good enough. It may not be as strong, but that's the point. This is a Captain America film. I love Wanda and Vision. I love the incorporation of Hawkeye. Surprisingly, I think they managed to introduce both Black Panther and Spider-Man rather well. And it didn't feel shoehorned. It actually felt natural to the story and a good stepping on point that once we're done with this film, we can immediately go into their films, which was Black Panther and Spider-Man Homecoming, which I think are great. And they both share a similar theme. Like, they're both trying to get used to their particular environments after what happened in Civil War. Spider-Man is walking out of the nostalgia of being with the Avengers, thinks he's ready for big action like that, but when battling the Vulture, he realizes that he needs to be focusing more on the neighborhood side of things, the streets, because there aren't that many heroes in the area. Yeah, Spider-Man Homecoming was cool. Black Panther, I love Black Panther. I think it's a fantastic film. Ryan Coogler did an awesome job with its direction. The supporting cast was strong. Michael B. Jordan portrays, besides Thanos, who we see later on, the greatest MCU villain of that time. I loved the African aesthetic and how, just my opinion, I love how it feels similar to The Lion King. I don't know why. There are moments where I'm like, it just feels like The Lion King, fathers and sons, advice, trying to be you and not your father. I like that particular trope, which I thought was cool. Black Widow was okay. Like you said, it was not needed. The characters were cool. Like, I liked Florence Pugh and David Harbour. They were nice to see. I'm happy that they have a future in the MCU. But overall, that movie did not need to be made. The visual effects were very wonky. Taskmaster was wasted. The villain was super one-dimensional, and it just felt very one-sided in a political standpoint, which I'm like, I don't want to see stuff like that in the movies, guys. Come on. So, Black Widow, So yeah, those are the branches of Civil War. Black Widow, Black Panther, great. Spider-Man Homecoming, I love. I thought it was a breath of fresh air from the Amazing Spider-Man films, which was getting very, very messy to me. Even though I liked Andrew Garfield, Tom Holland managed to balance the quirkiness of Tobey Maguire and the confidence of Andrew Garfield perfectly. That's what I got from Spider-Man Homecoming, even though I may not have been a fan of the Stark design suits. That was my issue, but I like that they justify it with the third act with Peter having to face the Vulture without using a specialized Stark suit, but instead using his own will and the power from within to take out the foe. I thought that was incredible. The scene where he is trapped underneath the rubble and he has to use his strength to get out of there was the best scene in the movie. Like, that is Spider-Man. That's why I love Spider-Man so much. So it's a great film. Next, chronologically, would be Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange was very, very cool. I think it borrowed a lot of tropes from both the first Iron Man film and the Ant-Man film, so it's not as fresh as I'd hoped it'd be. But the thing that saves it is the exploration into alternate realities and the multiverse, which would become a big part for the MCU in a later date. So Doctor Strange was cool. Benedict Cumberbatch was perfect. It wastes Mads Mikkelsen, unfortunately, but Tilda Swinton and Chiwetel Ejiofor did a great job. So that's Doctor Strange. Thor Ragnarok was a breath of fresh air. I had no idea who Taika Waititi was beforehand, but Thor Ragnarok was great. The opening was a bit fast-paced, and the way it throws away everything we knew about the first two films was hard at first, but once Thor settles on Sakaar, which is a creative waste dump, and he comes across the Hulk, he gets his hair cut off, and he realizes that his lightning powers actually come from within and not from the hammer. I thought the movie soared. It was great. And I know a lot of people compare it to Guardians of the Galaxy for some reason, but I'm not seeing it, to be honest with you, because those films were about family, and this was about a guy breaking himself down in order to build himself back up. That's what Thor Ragnarok was, and I thought it was great. Much better than the first two Thor films, in my opinion. It was just a blast. Barely had anything wrong with it other than the opening scene of the movie. Yeah, so that was Thor Ragnarok. Ant-Man and the Wasp was okay. It's just a streetcar chase movie. That's all it is. The visuals are a bit flat. The color pattern is a bit off. Like, it feels like somebody sucked the color out of it, and this is supposed to be before Infinity War. So surely things should be all light and colorful before the end days, right? right? So yeah, it was okay. It was cool to see Michael Douglas in a bigger role. Like I actually thought he had something to play. Like he actually felt like he was Ant-Man again, which I thought was cool. Evangeline Lilly was awesome as the Wasp. The Ghost character was, but I think the thing that makes this funny to talk about is, Lawrence Fishburne. He was a huge Marvel fan. He ended up in the DCU at the time, and he would complain like, DC's just not as good as Marvel. He ends up in one of the worst MCU movies to date. Ant-Man and the Wasp is lower to me than Man of Steel and Dawn of Justice. So, oh yeah, one more thing. I love more of the Lewis backstories and the Truth Serum. That was hilarious. I think that was the best part of the movie. But yeah, that's Infinity War was a work of genius because instead of focusing on all these characters from all over the MCU, they instead tell a 3-act story about the villain and his crusade. The fact they decided to go that route was genius because it allowed them to tell a 3-act story, and by the end, even though the Avengers lose, if you look at the story through Thanos' eyes, it's complete. It's messed up, but it's complete. I can still remember how in deep freeze I was once the credits started to roll. I'm like, this is the movie? Are you kidding me? This is it? This is it? So, a lot of surprises. Josh Brolin's performance was incredible. I love how the heroes were divided up. The sacrifices for love, whether it's healthy or sickening, was interesting to me. The death of Gamora was surprising. I didn't expect them to kill her off, but they did. The Battle of Titan and the Battle of Wakanda had great choreography. And Thor's quest for fate was incredible. I think this was the best iteration of Thor we've seen out of all the MCU stuff. His best appearance was definitely in Infinity War, and his quest for building Stormbreaker and trying his hardest to kill Thanos, even though he ends up losing at the end. Very tragic. But yeah, Infinity War, what an experience, man. Somehow it worked. I don't know how on earth they're going to be able to do it again if they ever try to do it again, but I don't think it's ever going to reach the pinnacle that Infinity War did. Endgame. I'll have to agree with Cameron again on this one. I like to think of Infinity War and Endgame as one 5-6 hour film. I think together it tells an incredible story from beginning to end. Amazes me how they were able to make this film envelope so much heart and care for all the characters introduced and expanded upon since the very first entry, which was Iron Man 1. It had a lot of heart-testing moments, beautiful visuals, and a fan-raving spectacle about it, especially, when we finally see all these characters assemble and Cap finally says Avengers assemble. It was the best time to be a Marvel fan, in my opinion. The best time, just to hear him actually say that line. My anticipation, my expectation was fulfilled, dude. It was great. And then, of course, what also makes this film such a memorable movie is the consequences and the sacrifices that have to happen in order for things to carry on the way they want them to go. I'm happy that they didn't all, survive. If they all, survived, I would agree it would have been a week. They actually let some people go was ballsy. And for characters like Iron Man and Black Widow, it was right. Because beyond that, what can you do with the characters? So... And I can't forget Captain America. The way they wrap up his story, I thought it was very touching, and they gave him the ending that he deserved. I would say overall, Infinity War and Endgame was the perfect ending to this Infinity Saga.
I agree, Ben. All right, let's get Josh's thoughts on Phase 3.
So Civil War is also one of my top 5 of the MCU. Just excellent, like you guys were talking about. And I like that both Winter Soldier and Civil War affect the timeline and just the general story so much. I feel like they almost affect it more than the Avengers movies do, at least up to this point anyway. Everything you guys pointed out about Spider-Man, Black Panther, like you said, Ben, just flow into it with a backstage pilot, so to speak, in such a natural way, and just elevates the story. Everyone is at their best. And for me, the real sticking point here is just the emotional story between the trio, Iron Man, Cap, and Bucky, and just Baron Zemo just does such a good job at he's probably the most underrated villain because he actually succeeds and no one talks about him. But just a great heart-wrenching story, and you already care so much for the characters at this point, and it just is just that much more gripping and emotional. I remember the little Team Thor shorts were pretty fun. I didn't see the last one, the Team Daryl one, but the first two were really fun. Black Widow, I really wanted to like it more than I did. Like you said, Ben, with the addition of David Harbour's character and some of the other ones, where it's just like this is going to be great, and then just it didn't quite get there. It's near the bottom of my my MCU rankings here. But Black Panther, like you guys were talking about, was excellent film. I loved the idea that they chose where in Africa to ground it, so it wasn't just like mincemeat of all the different things in Africa, but it was actually they could pull from the surrounding cultures of where they decided to plant Wakanda and make a cohesive identity for the culture there, which was really cool to see. And Ludwig Göransson's score is awesome, blending the African feel with kind of a sci-fi-esque too, and is really, really good. I really like the score. Spider-Man Homecoming, I feel like each of Spider-Man's villains have been pretty strong in the MCU, and this is definitely, another great twist, the greatest twist since The Winter Soldier. Everyone in the theater gasped. They were shocked. It was such a cool thing. And I feel like the rest of this movie is kind of underrated or forgotten about, aside from like those bigger moments like that. But it is a pretty solid entry, and just seeing kind of setting up who Tom Holland's Spider-Man, who his Peter Parker is, it succeeds at that. Doctor Strange is another one that's kind of on my lower end of the totem pole of the MCU, but I feel like it lays the groundwork for everything we see later with the character. Between this and Infinity War, I think it really lays the groundwork for the character he becomes, or I should say, not only what we see of him in What If, which is fantastic, but also what we see of him in like Multiverse of Madness and No Way Home. He becomes such a really key and great character. And I think that this film, even though I don't love it, I think it lays the groundwork for it really well. Thor Ragnarok's great fun time. It is totally different than the rest of it, like you were saying, Ben, but it's still fun. Probably one of the most funny, maybe, of all the MCU movies. Infinity War, man, what a ride! I don't know if ride's the right word, but what a Jeep ride through the woods of bumpiness and everything crazy going on. Not necessarily like a car chase ride, just like a ride of tragedy. Such an incredible theater experience as well, and kind of like what we did with the first Ant-Man and the Wasp, I feel like is another good palate cleanser coming off of such a big event film like that. And like you said, Cameron, it is definitely forgettable, but I'd still think it's a fun movie. I haven't seen it since it came out in theaters. I think I've only seen it the one time, but it was it was just a fun movie. And I think they succeeded at making a movie like the first one, but different. I don't know, kind of like, I guess, the 2009 Star Trek and Star Trek Into Darkness. Like, they're both really good films, but the second one is different, and it's hard to pick which one is better because they both have a similar feel and good things going for them. So I think that's how I feel about the first two Ant-Mans. Captain Marvel, I just rewatched this earlier this week after not having seen it since the theater, and I will admit I misjudged the film. I was wrong. I thought it was like feminist extremist garbage when I first saw it. And I don't know why I thought that, because looking at it now, like, it's not in the film. I don't know where I got that from, because it's not what the film is. Honestly, it's a solid film. I don't have that many complaints about it. I guess you could, like you said, Jude Law could have been used as maybe like a better character elsewhere, but I think he provides a good grounding to Carol's world and giving some validity to that maybe some of the twists in it wouldn't have worked if we didn't have such a strong character to anchor it to as Von Reg. But I think the 90s aesthetic, like Cameron, you mentioned, I think they did that because they didn't have a lot of time to give us the 90s aesthetic. Because aside from like the blockbuster and some of the other stuff, so much of it takes place somewhere else that doesn't have anything to do. Like you could put the basement in any decade since they've had basements with file storages, and you wouldn't know it's the 90s. And like the rest of it takes place on spaceships, and there's so many sci-fi elements. So I feel like maybe they tried to cram because they didn't have a lot of time to deliver to like really give us the 90s. It's definitely not something like Stranger Things where we're living in the 80s the whole time. But I really like the relationship between Carol and both Rambos, Maria and Lieutenant Trouble. I think Lashana Lynch does a good job. She is up and coming actress. She's being in so much lately, and it's really cool to see. So we'll have to keep an eye out on what she does, as we'll see later. And then just ending it with Endgame. My goodness. Another cinematic piece of history. Everyone just on the edge of their seat, like the entire movie, especially at the end. The portal scene will be on the TV. Someone will be watching on the TV, and I'll just come in at that point, and I'm just, by the end of it, I'm still weeping. And like, I didn't even need to see the rest of the movie before that. It's just so good. And like you said, Ben, with Avengers Assemble, like it exceeded my expectations, I would say. Just like with the hammer, and like there's so many moments of just complete satisfaction and awesomeness in this film. It's truly incredible and is such a satisfying conclusion, like both of you were talking about, with all the characters and I am Iron Man, and oh my gosh, this is one of the best superhero films, period. It's my favorite of the MCU. And like you said, Ben, it's going to be extremely hard to top any of this. And I don't know, I feel like maybe that's unfair expectations to put upon any of the other large Avengers movies, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what they do.
Great, guys. All right. Well, that closes out phase 3 in the Infinity Saga. Now we jump into the multiverse saga. Phase 4 kicked off with Loki season 1. Loki season 1, which again was kind of like the backdoor pilot in Endgame, much like they did with Civil War for Black Panther and Spider-Man. I wasn't a fan of this just because I really liked the close of his story in Infinity War. I thought that was so effective, what they did with Loki there, with Thanos and with Thor. I mean, that was just such a great moment that doing this, I know it's a different timeline, it's a different version of the character, but it just didn't sit right with me for whatever reason. And I could never really get into the show. So season 1 of Loki, not a huge fan. There's some cool ideas in it, like Owen Wilson a lot, but I just wasn't a big fan of that first season. And then we got What If. What If, I think, was great. I really hope they get into more animation. I mean, you've got Disney.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they did Big Hero 6 a few years ago, which was a Marvel property, but not tied into the MCU. But I want some MCU animated movies. I think that would be awesome. Really like the series. What a cool idea based on the comics of the same name. Really enjoyed that whole thing. What If Doctor Strange Lost His Heart Instead of His Hands is the best episode. It's better than the first Doctor Strange movie.
Yes.
Yes, I agree.
I agree. So big fan of that series. And then we got WandaVision. WandaVision, from the trailers, I didn't really get what was going on. Even from first episode, I still didn't get what was going on. But as it went on, I thought it was such a great idea. So unique, so just different from anything that I had seen before. So I'm a big fan of that show. We got Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which I really like. Actually, the more I've rewatched it, the more I've enjoyed it. I really like Simu Liu, who campaigned for the role. Like on Twitter, he asked Kevin Feige, when are we getting this character? And ended up getting cast. And he's just very charismatic and very, very fun, good in that role. I literally like Awkwafina. She's not only hilarious, but I think she actually has some really good dramatic moments in this movie. And their relationship, a best friend relationship like that, we hadn't really seen explored in the MCU. So I really like that. I like the whole mythology of the Ten Rings. Tony Leung as Wen-Wu is one of the best Marvel villains, I think, too. Very much you get his backstory, you understand where he's coming from. All the flashbacks in that movie are great. Has a really good visual style. The martial arts action is really cool. Gets a little out of hand in the third act, as a lot of these movies do. A lot of CGI. There's dragons. There's all kinds of crazy stuff going on. But I still really enjoy it. I think it's a really good entry, a good kind of fresh origin story that ties in with the past, right? With the Iron Man movies, Iron Man 1, Iron Man 3, where the Ten Rings are mentioned. So I do enjoy that movie quite a bit. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier series, I thought was okay. I thought there were some interesting ideas in there. It gets a little too political for me, for my taste, but there's some really good action sequences. There's some cool characters that are introduced. I'm curious to see what they do with Wyatt Russell in the role of U.S. agent in the future. I like that character. So some interesting things there, but not one of my favorites. Then we get maybe the most divisive MCU movie, Eternals. This movie, I think, is brilliant. It's from a visionary director, Chloe Zhao, who really just pushed the boundaries of what the MCU is. I mean, she's going way into the past, building a whole new mythology around the MCU that we haven't really been aware of before. It feels like almost not an MCU movie. And I think that's maybe why some fans don't like it as much, is because it feels so different. They're dealing with all kinds of different themes and ideas here that are very big cast that they're introducing. And I think they did it all really well. I especially like how this film is shot mostly on location and natural lighting. A lot of these movies, especially as we get into phase 4, they're all like on sets, CG backgrounds. It's like a lot of that, they kind of start to feel cookie cutter and kind of dull. But this movie doesn't, for me. It feels very fresh and different visually and story-wise. So I'm quite a big fan of Eternals. Then we get into the Spider-Man sequels, Far From Home and No Way Home. Far From Home, I think, is okay. I kind of like Mysterio. I like Jake Gyllenhaal in the role. I think his motivation is super weak. The way they tied it into Civil War was just kind of like a throwaway thing, like what? So
Yeah.
I don't like a lot of elements of it. I think visually it's again kind of one of these cookie cutter, very CG heavy kind of movies. The illusion sequence is cool. That's right out of the comics. I really like that sequence. There's moments I like. His relationship with MJ and the way that develops, I like, but a lot of it kind of falls flat for me. No Way Home, I think it's very uneven as well. I really like a lot of elements of the movie. Lizard and Sandman literally aren't there. I mean, there's just CG guys that literally plugged into the movie just because they wanted more villains, I guess. I don't know why. But, Alfred Molina back, he's fine. He's good. He's good as Doc Ock. The MVP is Willem Dafoe, obviously, as Green Goblin, who gives his best performance ever in this movie. I mean, it's just crazy what this guy does in this film. He's so creepy and scary. I really like that they completed Tom Holland's Peter Parker Spider-Man arc, what they did with Aunt May, and all of that really works well. So the second half of the movie, I think, is stronger than the first half. But yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag for me. Then we go into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which I'm a huge fan of because Sam Raimi brings his Evil Dead style, the crazy camera work, the horror elements are all there, fighting demons and skeletons, and there's zombies, and there's all kinds of just crazy stuff that he's doing in this movie, which I think is just super fun. It's really exactly like a comic book film should be for me. So I'm a big fan of that one. I also use Rachel McAdams very well in that movie, which they didn't in the first one. So really like that film. Then we get into some of the series. Hawkeye. This is my favorite MCU series. This is my favorite Avenger. And I think this series just really captured what he's all about, which is the family element, which is there. Even though his family's actually not in it a lot, it's really about this kind of surrogate daughter he has in the film, Kate Bishop, who's brilliantly played by Haley Steinfeld, one of my favorite actresses working today. And just the way she plays off Jeremy Renner, he's fully able to kind of embrace this character finally, I feel like. And what they did with just a very street level hero, which we've gotten a lot of, like the multiverse saga is getting really big and very cosmic and stuff. And bringing it back to the streets of New York was just a lot of fun for me. So really had a fun time with that series. She-Hulk, I mean, we don't really need to talk about this show, right? I mean, it's dumb. I did not really enjoy it. It's very episodic and very much like a sitcom. And that just vibe didn't really work for me. Very bad CGI. I feel like the whole thing was kind of just rushed and thrown together. So that didn't really work for me. Moon Knight, I did enjoy. I did enjoy Moon Knight a lot, especially Oscar Isaac. His performance is just so good in that series. And it's just so different. It's dealing with a lot of very weird ideas, Egyptian mythology, and all kinds of crazy stuff. So that was another kind of unique corner of the MCU that we got. Then we go into Black Panther Wakanda Forever, which I think is a great sequel. It's another film that I think has some issues with too many storylines, too many characters, too much going on. It's a very long movie. It feels long, but there's a lot in there that I like. All of Shuri's stuff, the whole arc with her, Angela Bassett's performance, one of the best. And
yes,
more. I mean, what a great character. I mean, he was just excellent in this film. So a lot in there that I like, just a mixed bag. Martin Freeman's character and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, I don't know why they're there. It just feels kind of very out of place for me, but did enjoy the movie overall. Then we come to Miss Marvel. Miss Marvel was a pleasant surprise for me. I wasn't expecting much from the series and ended up really enjoying it. It's just a kind of a delightful, youthful new origin story for this character. Iman Vellani is another perfect casting. We haven't talked about the casting in all these movies is pretty much spot on every time.
Yeah.
And that's all owed to Sarah Finn Haley. She's the casting director in all these movies and shows, and she does a great job. So yeah, I was a big fan of this show, actually. I really like the family dynamic. It was really well done, well written, well acted, pleasantly surprised. Then we come to Thor Love and Thunder, which is another one of my least favorite Marvel productions for a lot of the same reasons I mentioned before. Too much CGI, weak characters. The thing about the movie is Christian Bale's so good, and like that kind of side of it is really well done for the most part. But what they did with Thor just really wasn't compelling for me, and Valkyrie, and why is she there? Why is Korg there? They really have no purpose in the story. Natalie Portman was better here. I think was most engaged performance from her yet, and I like that storyline. It just wasn't fleshed out. I just felt like we didn't really get enough time between her and Thor, and to really develop that. I think it should have focused more on those two characters, and it kind of got messy with the rest of it. But there's some good visuals in there, even though it is CG heavy. There's some kind of interesting things that Waititi did, but again, a lot of kind of humor undercutting emotional dramatic moments, which I didn't care for. Didn't really work for me. So yeah, that one I wasn't a big fan of, but I did really like Werewolf by Night. Werewolf by Night was really cool. Very kind of unique entry, kind of Hammer horror, harkening back to a lot of the like Hammer horror and like Universal horror monster movies and stuff like that. Michael Giacchino, his directorial debut, the great composer that I'm sure we're all big fans of. He did a great job directing this. So, and you should also watch Director by Night, by the way. The behind the scenes look is so good. His brother did a whole documentary, and it's awesome. It's awesome. So cool. And then, of course, closing out Phase 4 with the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, which Mark Hamill on Twitter, he warned them not to do this because he'd been through this already with Star Wars. He said it was a bad idea, but they did a great job with it. James Gunn did a great job writing and directing it, and getting to see Kevin Bacon in there. Star-Lord finally meeting his hero was a lot of fun. Good stuff between him and Mantis as well, developing that relationship. So a lot of fun. Definitely recommend that. Josh, why don't you give us your thoughts on Phase 4?
So unlike you in two ways. I didn't like the way they ended Loki in Infinity War, and I did like Loki season 1. So I know we've talked about it off screen a bit as well, and I guess I understand more about it of his end in Infinity War. But I don't know. I just really liked the character exploration we got. Kind of like you were saying, it is a different Loki, so we get a different side of him looking on what life he would have had. And I don't know. I just think it's really compelling for season 1. So that's just my take. I also agree, or I should say, I do agree with you in this case that the best episode of What If is the Doctor Strange one. That was just phenomenal. I feel like overall it was a mixed bag. It kind of started out weak, and then the season, and then like had some really good episodes, and then it kind of went weak again. I didn't care for the Thor episode, but what was that? The last episode or two were just like incredible with Ultron and everything, and Jeffrey Wright did incredible voice work here. Just great as the character. I can't wait to see what happens next with that. WandaVision was such a breath of fresh air. And I like you guys, like you were saying, you don't really know where it's going, what the story is, and then it really develops. And I think there was a couple things that could have done better. They let us down with Quicksilver after teasing it so well. Maybe they'll make something of that. I don't know. I hope they do. We haven't seen White Vision again. We don't know what the status of any of this is. So that's I think that's kind of what makes the fans kind of concerned as well. Like, we don't know what's going on kind of with a lot of the things, because there's so much they're introducing and then they're not really showing us where it goes. So, or they're giving teasers, but they're not coming back on any of it. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I like you, really liked Shang-Chi. Total fan of that movie. Really like it. I think it's probably one of the strongest origin stories in the MCU. Just great movie, fun time. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I'm with you on that one. It should have been half as long as it was. It just wasn't. It just dragged. And then, everything just kind of, I don't know. We'll get to see where it goes in Cap 4. I did get a little political. I didn't mind his speech at the end. I think it was on the edge for me. I don't know. It was kind of, yeah. It could just be done better. Eternals is another one that I really liked. Everyone was like, "Oh, it's an awful movie," and I was like, "I thought it was fine." And then just like rewatching it, and especially listening to the score by Ramin Djawadi, incredible score, great score, so epic and so layered and nuanced. If you don't like the movie, at least listen to the score. Just all together, rewatching it, listening to the score, I don't know. I genuinely like the movie. Is it maybe a little too many characters, a little too much they're trying to do for an entire mythology that they could have maybe split up into another movie or something? Sure. But for what they were given, I think they did a really good job with it. And I think all the characters got enough screen time that you really like them all individually, which is a hard thing to accomplish with that many characters. And I think a lot of people say that's a negative, but I don't think that the director gets enough credit for what she did do with all of that, which was really good. Far From Home and No Way Home, Spider-Man. I agree with you. Mysterio's reasoning is kind of dumb, but moving on after that, I think it's an incredible movie. Like you said, that whole sequence with the illusions is like the main standout to me. That was of that film. It was incredible. And like from there on to the whole ending and just everything, I was just like, it was like a roller coaster. And I think No Way Home, it's almost like the most excitement and like, this is so cool that we've had since Endgame. But like you said, I think some of the elements of it just don't work as well after you take a step back and look at it. But in it, it's just great. And I love the way that they encapsulated, kind of like what you're saying, his story, and kind of like, and now he's back to the Spider-Man that everyone else knows from all the other Spider-Man stories of not having anything. No one knows who he is. It's like, it was a really cool way over these 3 movies to kind of like be one big origin story, which I know is something we've talked about off screen as well, that you've mentioned, Cam. I am not as high on Multiverse of Madness as you are. It's one of my least favorite, honestly. And it's so sad because I like Sam Raimi and I like everything they were going for here. I just wish the studio didn't interfere. I wish they let him do more of what he wanted to do. Like stuff at the end, like with the music notes, like I think that was one of the coolest parts of the movie. And I wish the whole movie had been like that, where it was just really wacky, cool stuff like that. So for me, it was a bit of a letdown. Hawkeye, also kind of a letdown. I think it was good, but after I watched it, it's forgettable to me anyway. It's the one series, MCU series, I do not remember that exists. I don't know. Maybe I just binged Hawkeye too fast, but for me, I just need to rewatch it, I guess. For me, it was good. It's just entirely forgettable. And I don't know why. Maybe I need to give it another shot. But I like everything that was going on there. The stuff that you mentioned, Cam, and obviously seeing Kingpin again. It was kind of like a restrained Kingpin, which I get because it's a PG-13 show.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that more later, but yeah, I didn't see She-Hulk. Moon Knight was excellent. I think it's one of the best shows. I'd say top 3 with that. WandaVision and Loki, I think, are the best shows, MCU shows we've gotten so far. And there were so many cool concepts and different things going on, like you talked about. Oscar Isaac was incredible, just really, really fascinating. Some of the best twists, I think. Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, my goodness. My hat's off to Letitia Wright for stepping in and doing so good at that role, having to take over the mantle of the film after Boseman tragically passed. And props to them for continuing with the story, like doing the story they did. Angela Bassett, like you said, was incredible. It's such a moving and emotional movie. Every time I hear Rihanna's song Lift Me Up, it's just like so good and brings back all the feels from that movie. I think they handled Passing of an Actor probably better than I've seen any other movie handle it. Usually it's passable. It's okay. They do a good job at it. The Hunger Games did a good job at it. But I think here, Chadwick Boseman isn't directly in the movie, but you sense his presence throughout the entire thing. And it's just, they honor him so well in the film from beginning to the end. And there's so many emotional moments. It's just such a powerful movie. One of the bright spots, I would say, of Phase 4. I didn't get to see Werewolf by Night. Miss Marvel, I just finished that before watching the Marvels. That was so much fun. I loved the, I guess, kind of Spider-Verse-y format for some of the things that they were talking about, blending animation or different kind of things like that, cool effects in a new way that we haven't seen before. That was really fun. Honestly, it was one of the most educational shows I've ever seen. I don't know much about the culture of India or that area. I know it was obviously, probably most people know, it was a colony of the British Empire, but I didn't know anything about partition and how Pakistan became a country. I didn't know any of that. So that was really cool to see, and actually made me want to look up more and just learn more about that. So that was really cool. Thor: Love and Thunder, a letdown, like you said. Not much to say there. I do think that the story beats they were telling with Thor, at least from the second half, and Christian Bale's character were really strong. The end of the movie, I think, was really strong as well. And be that as it may, it leaves me with a smile. And every time I hear Sweet Child of Mine, I think of this movie. So an ending can save a movie, and I think here it did enough. I did not care for the Guardians Holiday Special. They should have listened to Mark Hamill. It was fun, but it was just, I just didn't care for it. Yeah, that's Phase 4. My favorite of that would probably be favorite movie. Oh man, there's a lot here. There's really a lot here. I think the one I remember most, or that stands out to me most, is Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. And then there's like 3 different great series here. So a lot of good stuff in 4, despite the general sense of directionlessness.
All right, Ben, give us your thoughts on phase number 4.
Phase 4, like Phase 1, Marvel was back to the experimental route again. So chronologically, thinking off the timeline, I think naturally, if you want to continue your investment in the MCU, definitely go with Loki. I really liked Loki. I thought it had a combination of Doctor Who, Terry Gilliam's Brazil, and the mythos of what we knew and didn't know about the MCU. I thought it was really interesting how we see one of our favorite characters, Loki, get extracted from a point in time before he was inevitably supposed to die, and realizes that the entire 616 timeline, the Infinity Saga, was controlled the entire time. Like, someone was narrating that story. Nobody in that universe had a choice. It was destined pretty much by someone else the entire time. So to have a story about somebody outside of that timeline trying to fight for actual choice, I thought that was interesting. It was a very psychological journey, especially for somebody like Loki, who suffered tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. So I loved it. I loved how it introduced Sylvie. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but a lot of Sylvie is based off the Enchantress from the comics. So every time I think of Sylvie now, I don't really think of Loki. I think of the Enchantress. The Enchantress was another Asgardian who liked to play like Loki, and she liked to flirt with Thor a lot. So I love the inclusion of Owen Wilson. Anything that Owen Wilson does, including, of course, he's been in almost every Wes Anderson film to date. He's just awesome. Whether he's Lightning McQueen or a wannabe thief, he's just, wow, amazing. So, yeah, he's great. But I cannot forget, season 1 also introduces a variant of King Conqueror, played by Jonathan Majors, and boy, I just love that finale. I know it wasn't as action-packed as episode 5 was with Richard D. Grant, who, which, by the way, gave a really good performance. Nobody talks about Richard D. Grant's performance as an older Loki. I thought he was fantastic, and he should give him more work to do, because he is exceptional, and I felt bad for the crammed part he got in Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. Just my opinion, I thought he was a great actor. He should have been given more. But getting back to Marvel, yeah, I loved his performance in episode 5. I love how the ending of season 1 sort of breaks open the multiverse where now almost anything is possible, including the universes which you grew up with before you dove into the MCU. They could be out there, you don't know. The multiverse is this huge, expansive thing that is constantly changing, and sooner or later, timelines are probably going to collide, which made things even more exciting for me. So that is my overall thoughts of season 1 of Loki, which is fantastic. I think it stands among the best of the Disney Plus projects. I just love how experimental it was, how retro it was in the creation of the TVA. I love how it just gives Loki a second chance. As tragic as it was to see him go in Infinity War, I was okay with them extracting a much younger Loki, because this is a story about someone leaping out of their destiny, and I just find that interesting. It turns it into a weird fish out of water type story, which we haven't gotten yet in the MCU. So I found that very refreshing. Plus, it was nice to have a show where the comedy wasn't taking control over the MCU. We've had that a lot lately. So, and I think Loki is a good example of balancing both comedy but also dramatic states. And when the dramatic states hit, they hit like bullets. So a lot to appreciate when it comes to Loki. So that is Loki. Now, jumping back into Universe 616 with WandaVision, I thought that was the type of creative experimentation that I was hoping to see again from Marvel. I loved how they used WandaVision to bring in all the famous TV sitcom aesthetics from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, because I actually grew up watching some of them off of TV Land when I was little. So I watched I Love Lucy, Leave It to Beaver, Brady Bunch, The Mary Tyler Moore Show, and some of the modern stuff. Like, I just started watching like Modern Family and The Office, and I just thought this was a huge nostalgia fest, but it wasn't crammed in. It actually felt natural, because it had something to say about Wanda's psychological state, because a majority of the story is her trying to control her grief, because she's pretty much lost everything close to her life. Yes, she has the Avengers, but she lost the love of her life, she lost her brothers, she lost her families, and now she's trying to grieve with the fact that she's never going to have what she wants, so she creates this fake reality where no one's real and just makes you feel terrible for her, even though what she is doing is evil. It's evil because she's controlling people's lives. Yeah, very, very sad. I love how it introduces Catherine Hahn as Agatha Harkness. What a talented, underrated actress still. I would love to see more of her. I actually saw side note, I saw Step Brothers the other day, which I highly recommend. It's one of the funniest comedies I've ever seen, with John C. Reilly and Will Ferrell. Catherine Hahn plays a younger, anxious type of character, which I don't want to spoil, but I think she's great in that film. But yeah, I loved seeing Agatha Harkness. I liked seeing Evan Peters as a version of Pietro, but it's revealed that he's also a fake, which I was kind of mad about. I was hoping this meant, multiverse, that means the X-Men are coming into the MCU. Let this happen, let this happen. Nope, it's not that. So why did you cast Evan Peters? I still don't understand. I don't know what the thought process was behind that. But anywho, I thought that was cool. I love how it fulfilled the origin story of the Scarlet Witch, because as of now, we've never heard anybody call Wanda the Scarlet Witch. She was always mentioned Wanda, and we, the fans, called her the Scarlet Witch. It was nice that they actually established her in her comic accurate outfit, more powerful than ever. That was epic. And I loved the incorporation of Billy and Tommy, and how they turn into something like the Incredibles. I like they do that Incredibles pose, during the finale. Kind of brought some family Pixar-esque quality to it, but that's cool. And I cannot forget how it incorporates Monica Rambeau, who was just a little girl in Captain Marvel, back into the fold. I thought she played a great character. I love the return of Darcy Lewis from Thor and Thor: The Dark World. I thought she just disappeared, but they actually brought her back, and now she's an official, well-accomplished scientist. That was great. And Jimmy Woo from Ant-Man and the Wasp. So it was nice to see that they were acknowledging the interconnectivity through characters. I like that. I think they should do more of that in the future with ongoing shows. So yeah, that's WandaVision. Falcon of the Winter Soldier, I do agree. It's a nonsensical political thriller. As much as I like the arc of Sam trying to earn the shield, I did not like the villains. I absolutely hated the fact that Sam Wilson didn't see them as terrorists when in reality they are. You're blowing buildings up full of innocent people. You're terrorists. Like, oh, they're not terrorists. Yeah, you're a terrorist. I didn't like how it leaned so deeply into the political issues of today with like the Black Lives Matter and illegal immigrants. I don't like that. I thought it took away the fun of what the MCU could be. I'm not saying that we should ignore this stuff completely, but it shouldn't have been so burdening to the show. That was in my opinion. But I did like U.S. Agent. White Russell gave a really good performance, and I hope to see more of him in the future. I actually think they should have made him the villain of the show. That would have been an interesting angle, and actually have them just fighting over the shield. Heck, that could have been a movie. I think it should have been a movie. They're making a Captain America 4 now. Like, take stuff out of Falcon and Winter Soldier with what you're doing now. Make that Captain America 4. I would have been fine with that. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, not great. A lot of nonsense. It was cool to see Sam Wilson pick up the shield and have a comic accurate cap suit, but other than that, it just wasn't great. If people are calling it like one of the best things ever, they're wrong. They're so wrong. But that's Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and I have high hopes. I really hope Captain America: Brave New World delivers in 2 years' time. So that's that. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, I really liked. I love that they finally dove into the Ten Rings after we've known about them since the very first Iron Man film. I'm happy that they actually incorporated the real Mandarin this time, which made me forgive Iron Man 3. I love that they brought in Trevor Slattery with this pet furball thing, which I thought was cute. I love how it explored Asian mythologies with the dragons and spiritual animals. It started to feel like I wouldn't say Studio Ghibli, but kind of Studio Ghibli. Very therapeutic, but justifying and full of action. Simu Liu was cool. I expect to see more of him. I'm ready to see more of him. He's an Avenger to my eyes now. He's one of the new Avengers to me. I want to see him team up with like Sam Wilson's Captain America already. I want to see them kick some serious butt. But yeah, that's Simu Liu. Awkwafina was awesome. I love it that they weren't a love couple, but just best friends. That was very refreshing. Not every female character has to be romantically linked with the protagonist. They could just be BFFs. I'm totally fine with that. And Tony Leung, I cannot forget Tony Leung. I do agree. He does deliver one of the best villain portrayals that we've seen so far in the MCU. I love the father-son dynamic. Kind of, I wouldn't say it was like Shakespearean, but it kind of reminded me of, somewhat of The Godfather. Like the youngest child, he doesn't want anything to do with his father's power, but it inevitably takes an effect on him, whether he fully integrates into it or not. That's what it reminded me of. So, yes, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is at least 1.5 thumbs up for me. It's still a fun movie, besides the CGI fest. Eternals, I agree. Eternals is not trash. When I went to go see it, there was a lot that I really liked. I loved the cinematography. I love the costume design. I thought it was a well-diverse cast. I think my only issue with it is that it should have been a series on Disney+. That's my opinion. That some things felt a bit underdeveloped, which I wish that they developed more through episodes. Like, I wish they explored the Eternals through all these historical periods through each episode leading up to the present day against Arishem. That would have been interesting. Heck, I thought about this walking out of the it the first time, like, it would have been cool. Like, what if they were there? What if the Eternals were at the Battle of New York or the Snap or Endgame? Like, what were they doing? Did they get snapped? I don't know. We don't know. Actually, the more I think about it, they aren't really living, so I don't think they would have got snapped. So who knows? I just think there's a lot of potential still with the Eternals, and I think the more they avoid that stuff happened, it damages the reputation of seeing that team again. So that is Eternals. It's an excellent movie watching experience for me. Not the best, but I still think it's a good movie. It's better than Captain Marvel, Ant-Man and the Wasp, a lot of Incredible Hulk, a lot of movies which I think are so-so. Far From Home, yeah, I think it's one of the least Spider-Man-y, in my opinion. It's more like Spider-Man's secret agent. And it doesn't really turn into a Spider-Man film until the second half of the movie when Peter realizes that Mysterio is a fake and that he has to take on a responsibility, not as the new Iron Man, but a respectable character that people can look up to like Iron Man was to people. That's what I think the movie was about. And I love how it incorporates the spider sense, which is something that wasn't showcased at all in Homecoming. I realized that walking out of the movie for the first time. Yeah, there's no spider sense in Homecoming. Like, we need to get the spider sense back. So seeing it in Far From Home finally, having it be an essential need for Peter to take down Mysterio, I thought was great. I really love the post-credit scene. The post-credit scene saved a lot of the movie for me. If that post-credit scene wasn't at the end of the movie, I probably would give Far From Home a C, even though it does a lot of new things. Like, I think out of all the live-action Spider-Man movies that we've had, it's the only climax that takes place in the day. Yeah, all the other ones take place at night except for Far From Home, which I find that to be interesting. So yeah, that is a Spider-Man Far From Home. It's cool. Zendaya's likable now. I didn't like her in Homecoming. I thought she was annoying. Ned's great as ever, like he was in Homecoming, and Far From Home. No Way Home, I get it. I mean, stylistically, it may not be the greatest, but I love the substance, and I love how it honors the legacy of Spider-Man and makes it a burden for this version of Peter to carry, because he realizes, all these Spider-Men from different universes made some mistakes. I don't want to do that. I want to see if I can help people. That's Spider-Man to me. So the fact that he tried, yet suffered the consequences, I found that to be effective. And final battle. To see my childhood hero Tobey Maguire again as Spider-Man was one of the best things I've seen in the MCU so far. I cried when he entered the portal. I'm like, that's my Spider-Man. I know some people preferred Andrew. Andrew's cool. It was great to see Andrew. I thought No Way Home redeemed Andrew in a lot of ways. Seeing Tobey again was excellent, as well as the villains. Willem Dafoe, I think he was even better as Green Goblin in this than he was in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man film. He really honed in the psychological breakdown, seriousness, dangerous monstrosity that he was, like the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. I thought it was great. Alfred Molina was great as Doc Ock, like always. They mostly redeemed Jamie Foxx's Electro. I thought he was a bit too Edward Nygma-ish in Amazing Spider-Man 2. I'm happy they didn't make him blue, and that they gave him a costume that looked reminiscent of his classic green and yellow costume. Like, they made him yellow electricity. I really liked that. Sandman was fun. Yeah. Lizard was fun. I know they weren't as prominent as Green Goblin, Doc Ock, and Electro, but I thought they were super, super cool. And I cannot forget the sacrifice that Peter makes. No one talks about it. Everybody just acknowledges, oh yeah, Andrew Garfield's Peter gets redeemed. Oh yeah, Tobey Maguire gets to stop Tom Holland from killing Green Goblin, which is something that he regrets not doing in the first Spider-Man film. So everyone keeps talking about that, but not what Peter ends up doing at the end of No Way Home, which is to sacrifice everything that he has gained ever since he became Spider-Man. His friends, his superhero allies, the Stark tech, he has to give it all up in order to restore the multiverse back into its state. And then we leave him in his own apartment, trying to find a job, trying to stay in school, and then he develops a suit that looks very similar to both Tobey and Andrew's as a nod to them, with the bright blue silk spandex outfit that we all know and love. It's great. It may not be like a masterpiece stylish-wise, but I still really like the movie and how it honors 20 years of live-action Spider-Man. There's still a lot to love. The extended cut, I don't know if you guys seen the extended cut yet, but the extended cut fixes a lot of my issues. Like, it incorporates a lot of what made Homecoming and Far From Home interested to begin with, which was Peter Parker's reactions with his high school roommates. We see a lot more of that in No Way Home, especially with how Flash has used Peter Parker, Spider-Man's identity to build up his own fame. I thought it was hilarious. Multiverse of Madness. I'm a huge Sam Raimi fan myself. I love the Evil Dead trilogy, so the fact that we got a nightmarish, Raimi-esque, mind coaster, pulpy, adventurous, stylistic movie was awesome. But I do understand, when you have a movie that's titled In the Multiverse of Madness, you expect to see other characters pop up, more nostalgia bait. But I'm happy that wasn't the case with this movie. As fast paced as it was, I thought it was still maddening, if that makes sense. So I also like that they made Scarlet Witch the villain, kind of fulfilled her arc in a way because she was destined to be a monster who could outmatch the Sorcerer Supreme. So everything that Agatha Harkness tells her in WandaVision, it all comes true. And sadly, she meets a fate by the end, which is revealed in the timeline book if you want to know later. But anywho, yeah, Multiverse of Madness was great. It wasn't perfect, but I thought it was a lot better than, stylistically, than Far From Home, No Way Home, Shang-Chi, Falcon Winter Soldier. Had so much style that was needed in the MCU, again, to my eye. So Hawkeye was cool. I love that they brought back Jeremy Renner and they made it a story about him regretting the actions which took place on Vormir with Black Widow. I love that they made that the arc. I love how it incorporated Kate Bishop, who's a super likable character. Like, my gosh, a new character who I super duper liked. Really cool. Haley Steinfeld, give her more work. I'm still debating if she's either better as Kate Bishop or Spider-Gwen from Into the Spider-Verse. I'm still in debate of that, but awesome. It was cool to see Kingpin again, but I agree because it felt so kiddie. Kingpin felt restricted, like he only felt like a big dude instead of this gruesome, menacing crime lord who he is in the Daredevil series. But thankfully, we get a future with him in the next few years to come. So I'm excited. So Hawkeye was cool. Can I please skip She-Hulk? I have nothing good to say about that show. It's an uneven cringe fest, which was made to tick off people for the sake of ticking off people. That's what She-Hulk was about. It was not good. Moon Knight, I loved. It was like, what if M. Night Shyamalan made an Indiana Jones movie? That's what it felt like. And Oscar Isaac's performance was incredible. I love the Egyptian mythology angle. We're continuing to expand the MCU. We did the quantum realm. We did the cosmos. We did the multiverse. It was nice to see new mythologies rising up again. And I love how it showcases split personality disorder, which is something that Mark Spector suffers with. And to see his backstory in the penultimate episode, and to see him break down and realize the truth behind things, it was one of the best performances I've seen from any actor in the MCU. And I really hope we get to see more of Moon Knight in the near future. So Black Panther Wakanda Forever did the impossible. I didn't think that they were going to succeed with this movie, but somehow they managed to still tell a story that still honored the legacy of Chadwick Boseman's T'Challa. And I love how it incorporated Namor and the underwater people, even though they're not calling it Atlantis, they're calling it Telecon. The political atmosphere surrounding it made things feel a bit connected. I would agree seeing Valentine, who showed up in both Black Widow and Falcon Winter Soldier. I kept wondering what she was doing in there, but I think the more I think about it, I think there'll be purpose for it later down the line. We just haven't seen it yet. I think we just need to be patient when either Thunderbolts or Black Panther 3 comes out. I'm sure they're going to take that and go with it into the next one. So, yes, Black Panther 2 did the impossible. Letitia Wright was phenomenal as Shuri. I liked her in the first Black Panther, and I think they took her to newer heights. After the grief-fueled ride that was Black Panther Wakanda Forever, thankfully we got a much lighter in tone, more nostalgic superhero experience, which was Miss Marvel, starring Iman Vellani, and this was her first ever acting gig. She had no theatrical or movie experience before, so the fact that she just walked in her natural prowess, somehow she managed to crack what makes Kamala Khan so fun and engaging to be invested in. And it was very refreshing to actually focus on a character who is very much like us, someone who adores superheroes, creates fan stories of their own, and to have her be of Hindu descent instead of American descent, I found interesting. I like what Josh said before. I like diving into other cultures, and I think diving into cultures alongside mythology makes the whole MCU experience a lot of fun. So it was cool how they were able to utilize the Hindu religion, the Jinn roots, as well as just well, it's not really a spoiler. How it all connects to like later down the line with like Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau with like light and quantum energy. I found it to be very compelling. I also loved how they bring in damage control from Spider-Man No Way Home. I thought that was a great connection. So now I'm wondering like when are we going
That's
to
what
get
that's
Miss
about.
Marvel and Tom Holland's Spider-Man teaming up? Because I actually think their chemistry would be on fire to have those two characters meet up. But as of right now, Miss Marvel was really cool. If I had one complaint, it probably would be how easy it is for her family to support her superhero gig. Because if I was her mom, I'd probably be flipping out and preventing her from doing such dangerous stuff. So to see her doing all this action, have them like cheer in the background, I didn't buy it, unfortunately. But other than that, I thought it was a fun teenage superhero story with an okay villain, but a great mythology to build off of. I cannot wait to see what Miss Marvel's future is beyond this TV show and that of the Marvels, which just came out. So following Miss Marvel, we got Thor: Love and Thunder with Taika Waititi returning to write and direct, and starring Chris Hemsworth as the God and Thunder for the fourth movie. We never got a fourth movie for Iron Man or Captain America, so it was interesting to have a member of the OG MCU Trinity have a fourth follow up. And I will say, as funny and engaging as it was, I thought the plot was very fluid and that a lot of the story beats were too I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. It was too crammed. It was too crammed in my opinion. Too much humor. The villain played by Christian Bale, he portrays Gore the God Butcher. I wish he was given more to do. Like I would have loved to have seen him kill more gods. He's called the God Butcher. I don't want to see him just kill one god and then be told, "Oh, he just killed all these other gods." No, I want to see him slay famous gods. Like, for example, we could have seen him kill Zeus, played by Russell Crowe. I actually thought Russell Crowe did a good job. He was kind of hamming it, but I think that was the point. And I just love the scene where he walks down the stairs, lifting up the skirt a little bit like he's a Disney princess or something. I thought that was hilarious. Everything from Omnipotent City was really, really cool. I actually really liked Natalie Portman this time. It actually looked like she was happy to be on set again, had fun improvising lines with Chris Hemsworth. Their chemistry was the best, in my opinion, in this film compared to the first and second Thor. One of the issues as to why this movie wasn't the greatest was, during this time with Disney, Bob Chapek apparently wanted all movies to be less than 2 hours. Terrible choice because I feel like there was so much that was still needed for Thor: Love and Thunder to work, and so by the time it got the final product, it didn't feel concrete to me. It felt far too slippy, and nothing was impactful. There are no consequences, and that's what Marvel's been missing for me right now. The lack of consequences. We need consequences and interconnectivity and things to affect other things. That's what we're missing, but as of right now, Thor: Love and Thunder, yeah, I think it could be slightly better than The Dark World, but it's not a great MCU movie, in my opinion, unfortunately. So that's Thor: Love and Thunder. Werewolf by Night was awesome. For a 45-minute movie directed by one of my favorite film composers, I just love how it respects the classic Universal monster genre and that they were able to tell a compelling story less than an hour compared to Thor: Love and Thunder, Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness. This actually felt thorough from start to finish. Every single character had something to do. Every single slasher was affecting to me, and it made me even more excited to dive into more of the dark side of the MCU because we have other characters coming in who are part of the Midnight Suns roster. Like we just got Moon Knight. They're teasing Blade. I think with the introduction of Werewolf by Night, we could get characters like Ghost Rider very, very soon, and I hope that's true. I'd love to see the Midnight Suns assemble and take on someone like Mephisto. That's what I'm hoping. I think we need to start seeing more darker sides of the MCU that would make it unique again instead of being this 2 hour generic, lighthearted family flick. We need to see the different tiers of Marvel again. So that's Werewolf by Night. And out of all the chaos that occurred throughout the entire Phase 4 slate, I thought the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special tied things well with a nice Christmas bow. I love the story. I love the reveal that Mantis is Peter Quill's sister. It makes a lot of sense to me. I just love Pam Clementieff, is that her name?
Yep.
Her chemistry with Dave Bautista's Drax the Destroyer is just great. And I love that they were the leads who went to Earth to abduct Kevin Bacon, which, by the way, abducting Kevin Bacon as a Christmas present was perfect. It had to happen sooner than later.
Fun.
It's very touching. I know there isn't a lot of stakes or consequences, like I said previously, but it didn't have to be for a holiday special. I just wanted something to wrap up MCU Phase 4 in a nice bow, and I got that. Plus, it made me very excited for the follow-up, which was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So, yeah, Phase 4 was hit or miss, but I appreciate the experimental angle, and I understand the creators are just trying to figure out what is the new slate of the MCU, what it's going to be like. We want to stand out. We don't want to be the Infinity Saga 2.0. We want to try new things, so I appreciate that. So hopefully with the emergence of Phase 5 and the teasers for Phase 6, we'll get something unique along the way. So.
Excellent. Yeah, that's it for Phase 4, folks. Now we are on to Phase 5, the current phase that we are in the middle of right now in the MCU. Phase 5 is still not over. We've still got several projects yet to be released, but it was kicked off just earlier this year with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. This is the third Ant-Man movie. Peyton Reed back to direct. He's one of the only directors, him and James Gunn, I think, are the only two guys that have directed the entire trilogies that they've worked on, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
Unfortunately, to me, this one just kind of was a miss. I really wasn't that high on it coming out of the theater. It's only gone down in my mind every time I've rewatched it a couple times. And there's just, again, like you were just mentioning, Ben, consequences. There's no real big impact here. It's kind of a fun movie. Again, it's like, there's no really bad MCU movies in my opinion, but this one really just kind of falls flat as far as the character arcs. There's no real dynamic character relationships that change greatly over the course of the film. There's a lot of kind of just very, very wacky stuff. Some of it's pretty interesting to look at, but it's basically the entire movie CGI. I mean, they should have just made this an animated film. It's kind of one of those situations where they're in the quantum verse, and so it's all kind of just visually just kind of not interesting, a lot of it. Some of it's cool, but just most of it kind of just looks like bad CG backgrounds that you can kind of tell. The artists, even the artists themselves have come out and been like, we need more time to work on these things, we need more money, we need more, it's like these poor special effects people. I mean, man, they're overworked, and just movies like this are the reason why. So I would have appreciated some real sets, maybe some building some things, even though that would have been a challenge. I think it would have helped the actors. I think it would have helped the story. It would have helped the look of the movie. Even when you're using a lot of CG and weird stuff going on, you can still have something there for the actors to work off of, which would help. So I think that's a big problem with the movie. Again, it's fine. I can watch it and kind of have a good time. I'm not like dreading it, but it's not one that I'm going to go back to. It's not one that I really am waiting for. This was supposed to set up Kang the Conqueror, right, as like the big new Thanos. And it really just failed on that level too. As great as Jonathan Majors is as an actor, the writing here, I mean, he's just not threatening. He gets defeated by ants, and it's kind of like, okay, well, I guess he's done for. Of course, there's a reveal that there's variants of him out there, and there's all these different versions, and I guess that's kind of a threat, but we haven't really seen that. So this movie, it's okay. It's just not one of my favorites. The next film that was released this summer, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, is in my top 3 MCU movies of all time. I think this is an absolutely perfect send-off to these characters who I adore. These characters have been, the most endearing characters to me in the entire MCU. This, team of misfits that have come together and created this family aboard this ship, and they go on these adventures in space. It's just so cool, and it's so well done. And James Gunn cares so much. He's so passionate about these characters. You can tell he's got, very personal connection to each one of them, especially Rocket Raccoon, who is the star here. He's the secret protagonist of the entire trilogy, I guess, if you kind of look back on it now. That's what Gunn said. I was listening to the commentary last night on the Blu-ray I have, and yeah, he was just talking a lot about, how he always wanted this to be a rocket story, and get into his origin and how heartbreaking it is. It's just so well done. Fully CG characters, right? Him and Lila and Floor and Teefs. I mean, one of my favorite sequences. It's just so emotional. All of that stuff that you get with them. And again, they're fully CG characters, but the performances and the visual effects and all of it just come together in such a magical way. It was really impressive. Visually, this film is stunning. Great action sequences. That one in the hallway is an all-time MCU action sequence. It's so good. Just great stuff. And then another great soundtrack too, which really, I love that the soundtracks in all those movies tie into the story in some way. So it's just all very well thought out. Again, Gunn is such a phenomenal filmmaker. I can't wait to see what he does over at DC. But yeah, that was a great one. Then we got Secret Invasion. This is right there with She-Hulk for worst MCU, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And the thing was, I think because I'm such a fan of those comics, that the anticipation was pretty high in my mind. I was like, okay, Fury's got his own show, and like, Sam Jackson's back, and it's going to be the Skrull invasion. It's going to be all this espionage, and there was some of that. It just fell flat for me. Again, it felt like kind of like it should have been a movie. Like there was just too much, and there was dragging on, and characters and coming and going, and just Emilia Clarke was wasted. I mean, what a great talented actress, but I feel like they just gave her nothing to work with. And that finale, I mean, it just fell apart. The CGI and all of it it looked terrible.
Horrendous.
I was kind of shocked, honestly, by how bad I thought it was. So a lot of potential there. That it just again, moments were cool. Like certain things with Rhodey was interesting, and like certain ways they were trying to tie stuff in to what they had set up in Captain Marvel with the Skrulls. But Ben Mendelsohn again, he was great, but they dropped the ball on his character big time, I feel like. So yeah, it was really disappointing for me. That one was really a big letdown. Then we're really caught up now, right? So now we come to Loki season 2, which, again, I wasn't a huge fan of season 1. It was just too out there for me, too confusing. Wasn't a fan of bringing this character back. I didn't feel like there was any reason to. Season 2 starts, and it's much of the same. It's really even more confusing for me. It's kind of, they're doing all kinds of time jumping around, and bringing Victor Timely in, the original Kang, Jonathan Majors, and they introduce Ke Huy Quan, who is great. Again, the characters I like here. I like his character. I like, Mobius, Owen Wilson. Tom Hiddleston's fantastic as an actor. But I just felt like the writing wasn't coming together for whatever reason. As I was watching every episode, I was just waiting for it to grab me, and it never really did until the finale. The final episode of Loki season 2 is the best episode of any Marvel show they've ever made. It is the perfect conclusion to this character's story arc. It is like what we got in Infinity War, I loved, right? Because it's like him and Thor, like Thor seeing his brother finally, become a hero and try to save the day. He dies at the hands of Thanos. That was a great ending for that relationship. But this is the best possible ending for Loki as a character. So the finale kind of makes it all worth it, right? I'm so glad I stuck with the show and really, got through the whole thing. We're going to get into full spoilers here. If you haven't seen Loki finale, skip ahead, look into timestamps, and you can skip ahead. So the episode is kind of like Groundhog Day, right? It's like he's living the same days over and over. He's trying to save the day. But, Loki has always wanted the throne. That's always been his thing. He wants to rule. That's his whole goal in life, is to become king of Asgard and sit on the throne and rule over people. He wants it for the wrong reasons. He wants it to rule over others. He wants to impose his will on others. That's what he does in the first Avengers movie, right? He uses the Mind Stone to control Hawkeye and to control Selvig. He wants others to bend to his will. He doesn't understand the burden of the throne, right? He doesn't understand what the throne really is. It's about serving. It's about giving yourself to others and sacrifice and that kind of thing. The line, I'm burdened with glorious purpose, is the episode is titled Glorious Purpose for a very specific reason. He realizes now it is about serving others. He has to lay down his life for others, and he gets a throne, but it's not the throne that he thinks he's going to get. It's not the throne that he wants of ruling over the universe. It's a throne that holds the universe together, and no one's gonna ever know that that's what he's doing, but that's exactly what he's doing. So it was, I've got to say, just extremely impactful. Watching the beautiful imagery too. I mean, really creative and just great visual effects, great cinematography. It's so good. It's incredible. It reminded me of a Bible verse. I had to quote Mark 10, where it says, "For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." And that's what Loki's doing here. I mean, this throne Loki takes, it has no glory in it. He's not getting any glory from others, but it's the right thing to do. And he this journey that he's gone on throughout the show has taught him this valuable lesson. And it's one of the best Marvel moments for me in the entire MCU. So I was blown away. I was not expecting it. Again, as someone who wasn't a huge fan of the show, I was just really impressed. So had to talk about that. Then, of course, the Marvels, which just was released the same night. I went and saw the Marvels right before I watched the Loki finale. And the Marvels was so unexpected, too, because Captain Marvel, I thought, was okay. Again, I wasn't a huge fan of that film or the character. I just never grabbed onto Brie Larson's performance in any of her appearances. This was totally different. This was a fun, light, kind of breezy film, very short runtime, hour 45 minutes, shortest MCU movie, but it had real purpose. It had real drive to it. Her character and what she goes through and what you learn about her is so fascinating, and really was just impressive with what they did with her character. Bringing in Miss Marvel was great. She had a lot of great energy, a lot of great humor in the film. And then, of course, Teyonah Parris coming in as Monica Rambeau was great as well. So I thought the three leads just had great chemistry. I thought, the story just worked. It was another kind of forgettable villain, it was kind of one of those things going on there. So that wasn't quite as strong, but I thought the way that they tied her in with Captain Marvel after you learned about what happened in the past did work really well. And so the finale was great. A lot of themes of family and of sacrifice and of forgiveness. All of these are themes that go throughout this film. Sam Jackson was back and had a great time with him and the Flurkin and Kamala Khan's whole family and their whole kind of subplot they had. I thought it was fun. So it's just a good movie generally. I'm not putting this as like top 5 MCU movies necessarily, but I think it's a really solid film. And it didn't have any kind of other agenda going on. It was just a really fun, straightforward superhero movie, sci-fi action film. So I had a good time with it. We'll look ahead in just a moment at the rest of Phase 5, but I want to get your thoughts on where we're at so far in Phase 5. Ben, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. So starting with the very first film that came out of Phase 5, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I really liked the premise. When I saw the trailers, I thought it was a natural continuation from where Ant-Man and the Wasp left off after rescuing Janet from the quantum realm and pondering over, how could she survive all by herself down there for 30 years, but it's revealed to us that she wasn't the only one down there. Made a lot of sense, and the fact that she kept many secrets from her family makes a lot of sense. So I think incorporating a villain like King the Conqueror, I thought made sense, especially after Loki season 1 meeting He Who Remains, who was a variant of King, and explaining there are many versions of me out there, and some are good, some are even worse than me. So that is a continuation of where Loki left off, and we're finally getting introduced to different variants of Kang. I thought that was interesting. Now, when it comes to the execution of style, I thought it was a very flat movie, unfortunately. It didn't stand out to me the way they depicted how it feels to be small, like in the first Ant-Man film. I thought that's what made it unique. This time, you're kind of in a flat sci-fi B-movie Rick and Morty type of world, and some of it is neat, but just the way it's crafted, you can tell it's all fake. Nothing feels real and grounded. There aren't any sets. Everything's green screen, like you said. I believe they used the
The same sort of technology that they used for the Star Wars shows, the exact same technology. So it was okay. So yeah, the Rick and Morty weirdness was just eh. The Wasp is just there. Like Evangeline Lilly, she's just there. She doesn't really have any impact. I like the relationship between Scott Lang and his daughter Cassie, who actually gets a seat of her own, like in the comics. So I thought that was cool. It was a huge surprise to see Darren Cross return, but not as the Yellow Jacket. This time, MODOK, which made a lot of sense. You know, I didn't think MODOK could work in the real world, so to have him be introduced down in a weird reality like the Quantum Realm made sense. But the CGI, man, at the theater, the CGI looked horrendous. Thankfully, it looks better now watching it off of Disney Plus, but still, I can't get the first view of MODOK out of my head. It just was terrifying. It's the things that emerge from the worst dreams you could ever generate from your mind and imagination. But yeah, so Quantum Mania, it was cool. I really like the post-credit scenes with the Council of Kangs. I still think Kang is a potential villain who could really lead the multiverse saga to full force. So as long as they start to incorporate the character of Kang, whether he's going to be played by Jonathan Majors or not, I think we'll be okay. But yeah, all in all, an average flick. Now, following Quantum Mania, we got Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and I agree. I think it's among the best of the MCU that we've gotten since Infinity War and Endgame in terms of style, substance, emotional impact, the performances. I love it how the film recontextualizes the story, which began with the first Guardians of the Galaxy film. We thought it was just going to focus on Peter Quill, but actually it's about the development of Rocket Raccoon. And now in Guardians 3, we finally get the backstory. We get a lot of David Cronenberg-style body horror, which I didn't expect to see from an MCU film. The level of darkness that we see blew my mind, and it made me like happy that James Gunn was actually able to do this. Because imagine if he was restricted like all the other filmmakers, like I don't know, Taika Waititi or Peyton Reed, for example. I'm sure Peyton Reed was restricted. It looked like he was restricted, but for some reason, James Gunn was given full trust to create his full vision even after getting fired back in 2017, 2018. Another aspect I love, at first I was against it, but I'm so happy nobody died. I was thinking that somebody was going to die, someone's going to take the bullet like Drax. I thought Drax was going to die, or Mantis, but I'm really happy they all, lived through their experiences and they're always going to cherish their time together as a family. So it was very bittersweet when they started playing The Dog Days Are Over and you're knowing that this is the end. Peter Quill is going home. Gamora may not be the Gamora that we grew to love in the first two Guardians films, but this is the Gamora, and we can accept her now. Nebula was awesome. I thought nobody really talks about Will Poulter's performance as Adam Warlock, but I think there's a lot of potential with that character in the future if we're going to be seeing this new roster of Guardians again. I hope so, because it'd be cool to see them connect with the Eternals or perhaps Nova. I think there's a lot that there could be explored still with that iteration of the team if they still want to explore the Guardians of the Galaxy. So all in all, a very fun movie. And lastly, about that film, I really like the characterization of High Evolutionary. I cannot remember the actor's name, but I really loved him in James Gunn's previous project, Peacemaker, which was a continuation from DC's Suicide Squad. That was a great show. If you haven't watched it yet, I highly recommend. It's a bit more adult themed, but if you liked the Suicide Squad, I guarantee you're gonna love Peacemaker. So Guardians 3, my gosh, what a great closer to the MCU. And at the time, I actually thought I was gonna leave the MCU. I thought it was done. I'm like, you know what? I wanted to stick to the MCU to see the Guardians have their ending. Now the Guardians are over. I really don't care where the MCU goes. It's either going to succeed or it's gonna flunk. So I'm happy either way. So that was Guardians 3. Secret Invasion. The first episode was really interesting, in my opinion, and I thought it was bold for them to kill off Maria Hill. And I kept thinking, like, you know what? You got Maria Hill killed, like you got Agent Coulson killed in the first Avengers film. This is a good reason to reassemble a new roster of Avengers because you got Sam Wilson's Captain America. You got Shang-Chi. You've got She-Hulk. You got White Vision, Ant-Man, the Wasp. Form this team. I'd like to see them kick some butt, and I'm sure the fans want to see some Avengers, but they decided not to go there, And then they decided to turn Rhodey into a Skrull. And apparently, the Skrull has taken over Rhodey since Civil War. So that entire time, James Rhodes was a Skrull during Infinity War and Endgame. Those stories, he was a Skrull. So I don't know if I'm on board with that. It kind of makes me sad. That means Rhodes never got to see Tony before he died. So
I heard
a
someone
lot
say
of
that it
hurt.
was actually right after Endgame. I don't know where I read that, but I don't know if it was Don Cheadle or one of the writers. I can't remember where I read it, but it because everyone was saying it was Civil War because he's in the hospital gown.
Yeah, that's
But I heard someone say it was actually sometime after Endgame. I don't know if that's accurate. I don't know if they've officially said
I hope
anything
that's
yet,
true.
but
I
I hope
hope
so
that's
too.
true.
Yeah.
But yeah, Secret Wars was just a huge missed opportunity that could have been a great start for a new roster of Avengers. The Super Skrull subplot was really cool, but the way they decided to wrap it up with Talos' daughter, played by Amelia Clark, it was a waste, man. I can't imagine how cringy it must have been to be doing something like that with the fake muscular Drax arm. That looks so weird, man. Weirdest thing ever. And yeah, Nick Fury's characterization was cool, but now going into the Marvels, Nick Fury doesn't act anything like that in the Marvels. So I'm wondering, like, did Secret Invasion actually happen, or are they like, nah, it's so bad that we're not going to count that as the canon anymore? I don't know, man. So when it comes to Secret Invasion, as of right now, I'm kind of throwing it away. I'm pretending it didn't happen. Just me. I'm going to pretend that project didn't happen and throw it in the trash like She-Hulk was. So Loki season 2, my gosh, was masterful. Like season 1 beforehand, I just love how it explores the concept of space and time, and that the rules of time travel is completely different to anything that we've ever seen before. It makes it stand out and it broadens our imagination of how time could actually work. So yeah, that was good. I loved Jonathan Majors' performance as Victor Timely. Ki Kwan's introduction into the MCU as Obi. Side note, I really loved his performance in Everything Everywhere All at Once. I thought he deserved that Best Supporting Actor Oscar. I was really happy for him, so it was great to finally see him in the MCU. Owen Wilson is as great as ever. Sylvie slash Enchantress is as great as ever, but the thing that brings it home is how the finale wraps up. And I'm really happy it wasn't another to be continued for season 3. No spoilers, my apology, but this felt like a great closer to a character we've grown to love since 2011. And who knows, maybe we'll see him again. I mean, it's possible. I think we could see him again in Secret Wars, but it probably won't be a prominent factor. But if this is the last time we see Loki, I thought it was a great ending, a beautiful ending, and it makes me even more excited about the realities that Loki is allowing to live for them to live. Like it could be the X-Men universe, it could be a Fantastic Four universe. We don't know. There are so many possibilities on the horizon. So hopefully, multiverse side of things, we start connecting the dots. So that is Loki season 2. Even though Loki season 1 and season 2, I actually treat as one whole season. I think it's a fantastic storyline from episodes 1 to 12. Perfect storyline for this variant of Loki.
So here are my thoughts on the Marvels. In short, the Marvels is a chaotic, slightly cringy yet fun ride, which will either entice or tick off people even more. That is my honest opinion on the movie. Here are the pros. Captain Marvel's arc actually works this time around compared to her last outing in the original. I finally understood the human versus alien conflict which was dominating her soul throughout the runtime. Kamala Khan's Ms. Marvel steals the movie. If I'm being honest, treating it as a continuation of the Disney Plus series made it a much better viewing experience for me personally. Monica Rambeau was lovely as well. I really loved her role in WandaVision, and it was nice to see some of the drama that takes place between her and Carol Danvers, even if it doesn't go as deep as it could have, in my opinion. The interconnectivity, finally, after watching movies and shows that felt like standalones, it was nice to have a movie that acknowledged and progressed the current state of the MCU. It did, thank the Lord. And I really loved the comic book style framing in some of the shots, and the funniest scene of the movie, the Flurkins. When the Flurkins are swallowing up the people and they're playing Memory from the Cats, I thought it was a big middle finger to the Cats movie, which came out a couple years ago. The monstrosity that we will never talk about, even though I'm talking about it now. Movie, man. So those are all the pros from this movie, as well as, of course, the chemistry. I thought the chemistry was incredibly strong. I hope to see more from the trio again. Here are the cons. It was rushed. There's barely any space to breathe, and when it does, they go into a montage instead of a thorough dramatic scene with a lot of depth. Example, I wish there was more of a divide between Carol Danvers and Monica Rambeau. I wish there was more to it than what we got. Secondly, like Christopher Eccleston, Mads Mikkelsen, Jude Law, Bill Skarsgård, Sigourney Weaver, etc. Please give me a warm welcome to Zawe Ashton for another waste of a villain. Every scene, I'm not kidding, we've already seen in the trailers. Nothing new, no depth, other than a generic hatred towards our protagonist. Pretty much. Samuel Jackson's Nick Fury was nothing like how he was depicted previously in Secret Invasion. Are we going to ignore it now, or was there more that was left on the cutting room floor? I don't know. He felt like Talos' version of Nick Fury from Spider-Man Far From Home. The third act was a bit underwhelming as well. Really was hoping it would feel more impactful, but it ends up going out with a dud. However, the two endings got me excited for the future. Both spoilers, teasing a young Avengers, and secondly, Kelsey Grammer returning as Beast from the X-Men movies. That was awesome. Should I credit it to the overall quality of the movie? Probably not, but at least I didn't walk out of the movie frustrated. I actually walked out with a smile on my face, and I thought, it was a fun ride. So in conclusion, a messy yet fun ride. Probably not as thrilling as, let's say, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 or Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, but it's a good watch with friends who don't take this kind of stuff seriously. So, yep, that is my review of the Marvels. I gave it 3 stars.
Excellent. All right, well, that catches us up. Let's throw it over to Josh and get his thoughts on Phase 5.
I didn't even realize Quantumania was a part of Phase 5 until I was looking it up after. I didn't even know we'd exited the quagmire of Phase 4 into Phase 5 until afterwards. But now looking back, Phase 4 isn't as bad as I thought it was in the moment. But it's par for the course with Ant-Man films, Quantumania. I think I like it a little better than both of you guys did. I didn't even notice any bad CGI. Maybe I just wasn't looking in the right places. I don't know. But I don't know, unless it's like Flash bad, I don't particularly notice it that much. Or if it's been a while, you can kind of tell if it's been some years since the film came out. But I don't know. I actually gave it some props for having probably some of the most creative brand new, unique creature creations since Star Wars. Between Star Wars and Star Trek, they've done every sci-fi creature you could think of, but they actually had some really unique and interesting stuff here in this film. So I gave them props for that. It wasn't anything super spectacular story-wise. It was, like you said, really like a father and daughter story. That was the heart of it. And aside from Janet's plot line being there and the reason for being there, there wasn't too much else to the story character-wise. But I did like Kang. I thought after Loki season 1, like, you're expecting He Who Remains, you're this like great villain, and then it's like this kind of like off the cuff, like everything's cool kind of villain, and it wasn't a big bad or imposing. So for Kang, and I was like, this is weird. But then here we see another version of Kang, and I thought he was more imposing and villainous. So I was like, okay, so we're getting somewhere. Which I'll revisit the King discussion back at the end of Loki season 2 because my thoughts change again. But I thought it was good. I thought there was a lot of laughs. MODOK was just hilarious. I was not expecting that at all, and that just the way they did it, it was like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. And I like what you said, Ben. That it probably wouldn't have worked in normal world. So I think doing it in the quantum realm was a good choice. Yeah, moving on from that, Guardians 3, man, I agree with you guys. I don't remember exactly where my MCU ranking it is, but it's definitely top 10 if not top 5. It's such a fantastic film, and I think I saw it like twice in theaters, and then like a month or two later, or however long it took to come on Disney Plus, my roommate was watching it, and I just like, as I was going by, I just kind of saw the beginning of it, and I was like, man, you just get, when that you see a film and it just kind of brings that warmth to you, you're like, oh man, this is good. And I was like, wow, that was a very short time between theater and now where I had that response to it, and I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that I have to mention, I forgot to mention when I was talking about it, I think that's the first movie, I think since Endgame, that I've seen more than once in the theaters. I ended up seeing it 4 times.
Oh wow,
4 times! Wow,
I did. Yeah,
I saw it twice.
It's worth it. It's a good movie.
Yeah.
Time, but then they announced the digital release like a month afterwards. I'm like,
right.
So.
And I think like you guys said, coming on Rocket's story was so unexpected, at least for me. And yeah, it's beautiful and tragic, and the great villain, like you said, Ben. It's just a really fun story. Everyone gets a moment to shine, and like by the end of the film, and you see how it's like so bittersweet, like Ben you were talking about, and I really really hope we, like you guys said, get to see that team, New Guardians, because like, dude, I'm just from that little snippet we got, I am all in. Like, you could have started the next movie right there, and I'd be like, yes, do it.
Yeah.
It was so much fun, and I love the end character arc. If there's anything I think they could have done a little bit more on was Adam Warlock's character, maybe like a little more character development story wise. But I like where they ended up. I liked the forgiveness theme and stuff like that they did. I thought that was really cool, and I like that he ended up as part of the team. Like that was just like, again, they're all like such unique characters, and that's what the original Guardians team is, just so unique characters. Now we get like a new team with like a new set of unique characters that are all different from each other, and I just thought that was so cool. I didn't see Secret Invasion until maybe like a month ago. I don't know why I slept on it, but I guess I wasn't watching much TV. But even though I also think it was kind of a miss, I do like it better than both you seem to. Well, first of all, I was surprised this was going to be a series. I thought this was going to be like the next Avengers movie, because I don't know, I haven't read the comics, but from everything I hear, like this is the big thing. This is a huge thing. So to see it relegated to a series, and B, to see them do this with it, I was a little confused. Ben, you were saying like, why didn't they just bring more superheroes in, as far as like, you know, once it's a series, once it's a story, once they're going. And I do get Fury's reasoning, like they've already got War Machine. I don't need to give them any more superheroes to impersonate. So I get that aspect of it, why he had to do it alone. And I agree with you. Killing Maria Hill, I was shocked in the beginning. I was like, no.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think the series as a whole, it just, like you said, it took too long. I kind of wasn't sure what the overall direction, or what the like, what was everyone like. I knew what the villain's point or what his aim was, but I didn't like. It seemed like there was a lot of infighting on the good side about what the goal was supposed to be, or I don't know. It seemed like they just need to sit down and talk for a minute, and they didn't really do any of that. At least Fury and Talos, and I don't know, but I really really liked the story with Fury's wife, him and his wife. That was really cool. I thought, even though yes, Emilia Clarke's a great actress and she could use a bigger role in some other Marvel thing, I thought she did really well with what she was given here. I really liked her character. I wasn't so, again, with CGI, I didn't really notice. I think it's weird because we're not supposed to see Drax's arm on her body or whatever, but I didn't mind any of that. Everything was so quick anyway, it's hard to really, times I was like, I don't know whose appendage that is. But even one time it looked like it was a thing, maybe I was like, well, that's not right. I thought it was fine. I kind of binged it, maybe that helped too, just kind of running through it. But yeah, I thought it was good. I definitely think it could have and should have been way better, but I liked some of the stuff they did. Man, Loki season 2, wow. I thought it was really strong in the beginning. I loved seeing Obi. Ke Kwan's character was absolutely, he stole every scene he was in. It was just a delight, and just to see where they were going in the second season with the time skipping and stuff like that, it was really cool. And then kind of like what I think what you guys alluded to, kind of in the middle, and like episode 3 and 4, I didn't watch 4 or 5 yet, and 6 had come out, or it hadn't come out, but I saw it was going to be the final episode, and I was like, final episode, 6 episodes, which yes, that's what they did before, but the way 3 and 4 were going, it was like they were going for a 22 episode season. Early 2000s TV before streaming, the progression of the writing and everything just seemed like the story was going to take a much slower turn to go anywhere. And so I was like, where are we going with this? What's this season about? What's going on? And then episode 5 and episode 6 came in and just slam dunked the whole thing. It was awesome. And like you said, Cam, best finale in all of the all of the MCU shows. It was incredible. Just everything about it was just amazing. And I think that's revisiting Kang again, seeing not only Jonathan Majors be Victor Timely, which he did a fantastic job as. He totally disappeared into that role. But then seeing him and you're kind of like, is he going to be good or is he going to be bad? You don't know. But then at the last episode, going back and seeing He Who Remains in that, like reliving those scenes, that was so cool. And just to like see Loki struggle and learn, and then he's like, and even stuff like reincarnation, baby, and like he said that in season 1, and they planned, like the writers, whatever, planned that to come into effect in season 2, and that was like so cool. And it just like really made me like, okay, he's not just like some guy singing at the end of the world, like sipping a margarita or something and having a good time. Like, no, he's definitely a figure to be reckoned with. He's an imposing character. And so his revisiting him at the end of season 2 really made me respect him as a character. And it kind of looks like we're not going to see him anymore, that he did end up still dying, I guess. I don't think we necessarily saw it, but I think it's implied. But yeah, so just revisiting that character was really cool. And anytime something revisits something that's in the past is really cool for movies and shows. So them doing this where it revisited another season, previous season, was really cool, and I really like that. And of course, Loki finally walking out and getting his crown back, and like everything you said, Cameron, was fantastic about it. I didn't think about some of the aspects of that, like, yeah, he is sitting at, like, you see it, but I didn't really realize, like, oh, he is getting a throne in the end, and it is all about, I did realize the self-sacrificial aspect, but not in relation to like the throne and his goal and all that stuff. So thank you for that. But it was, oh man, Loki season 2 is so good, and it immediately like shot it up to the #1 MCU show for me. Great show. I really liked the Marvels. I had such a good time watching this movie. I think it's the breath of fresh air that we need in the Marvel movies. I don't know anything about the director. I don't know her other films or anything like that, so I can't speak to like, oh, I saw her style come through. But I feel like it must have, because like it's such a fresh and unique take. There's so many like unexpected things that happen that are just like not your stereotypical Marvel thing, in like the best way possible. Though the movie took risks and it was fun, and I just really enjoyed it. I do agree, Ben, that I think there could have been a little bit more between Carol and Monica, like a little more of the heart to heart. I did like what they did put in there, and it was really interesting seeing just everything working out between Captain Marvel, and just kind of connecting those dots between that movie and this one was really interesting, and just kind of everything that played out character wise. I don't know, I just really liked between the 3 leads. They interconnected it so well. It really worked for me. So I guess I'll say spoilers from here on out. But Aladdin.
Oh, Singing Planet. Oh,
you didn't like that? Oh my gosh, I loved it.
But I cringed as well. I'm like, I'm not comfortable hearing people sing in Marvel. It worked though. Don't get me wrong, it worked. It just was like out of nowhere, and then you hear Brie Larson start to sing. I'm like, really? I know she's a singer. She has a singing background. I don't know if you see. She does. You've probably seen Scott Pilgrim versus the World. She sings in that movie. It's a great film, by the way, by Edgar Wright. But yeah, it just felt like they temporarily turned a Marvel movie into a Disney princess movie. Literally.
That's fair. I don't know. I just loved it, and every single part. I was listening to the soundtrack on the way here, and I got to that part, and I was like, "Is it actually going to include the singing?" And they did, and it is in the soundtrack. And every single time, like they pause where there's like a choral background kind of singing where they're talking in the film, and then they like get to another part where they start singing. And I was like, "This is so cool!" Just totally did not expect that for a Marvel movie, and then it's like, oh, they can't understand you if you don't sing. Like that was such a creative little writing on that culture. Like her being a princess and having married this guy, I was like, what is going on? This is like another thing that was a huge risk that they took, and it was very unexpected, and I thought it really paid off. Yeah, the villain, like you said, Ben, it's not really, she's not super used. They did ground it in Captain Marvel's past and like everything that happened there, so there was like, it was compelling in that sense. But I feel like maybe there could have been more that they did. I don't understand. I know why she died when she used both of the bands, because they alluded to it in the beginning, but I don't know why Miss Marvel didn't die. They didn't really explain.
She's a mutant. Her mutation's probably what saved her. So
okay, that could be. Yeah, it was just like, oh, we're just gonna use it. At the end, it looked like Carol had one, and she and Miss Marvel had the other, right? And Kamala had the other. It looked like they split it.
I think Kamala had both, actually.
No, you see Carol does have one when they get in that airplane at the end on the farm. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, Carol does
yes.
have one on.
Yeah, sorry, the very end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The very end.
Yeah, so that's interesting to see what I don't know exactly what the bangle just between watching Miss Marvel and this, I'm a little confused as to what by the end of Miss Marvel, I was like, so what does the bangle actually do? I'm not sure if it's just like a power magnification. I don't know. It looked like Miss Marvel could do everything without it, it seemed. So I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, something with quantum energy they mentioned, I think briefly.
Oh,
You
you're
know
right.
what my theory is? I noticed this in Quantum Mania, but King's technology is very similar to that of both Kamala's bangle and Shang-Chi's 10 rings. I think they all have a connection to King the Conqueror in a certain way. At least that's what I'm hoping. So,
I think you're right.
And they did say it was
Yeah.
ancient. They said all of them were ancient, the
Yep.
rings
Yeah.
and the bangles.
yeah.
I did think that maybe the rings were connected, but I didn't think about I didn't know to what. Aside from
But-
maybe the bangle, I didn't think about King's technology. That's a good point.
Well, there is a 10 rings Easter egg in Miss Marvel during the flashback sequence. They're in this tomb on the floor. There are 10 rings circled
Really?
around. Yeah, so the 10 rings and the bangle have some sort of similarity in terms of its technology. But my theory is that it all connects back to a variant of Kang the Conqueror. That's what I'm assuming. So,
Maybe
kind of like the
variant.
Infinity Stones. That's what I think this is. It's artifacts, not Infinity Stones.
Oh, I like that angle. That is
Yeah.
cool. So that makes me wonder what else, if there are any more, what else we're gonna see.
I think the Darkhold's one of them too.
And the ebony blade that we see in Eternals.
That could be a Kang weapon for all we know.
Yeah.
Oh, totally forgot about
Yeah, they could tie all that together. That'd be cool.
because that's also definitely an artifact.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't know. It looks like it's going to be really cool to see where we go from here. The whole end time when they're trying to put everything back together, I was like, isn't that just Hala? So that part doesn't entirely make sense to me. Why she would have opened a portal not to Hala if she was trying to absorb the sun, whatever. I don't know. But the fact that I think they said it's another dimension, right? Is that what?
It's actually an incursion, is what Reed Richards explains to Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness when two universes are about to collide one another. Either both or one of them's going to get destroyed. That's what it was.
Okay.
It opens a rift within the multiverse, which is why Monica ends up in a different universe outside of the MCU.
Okay. But like you guys said, both of those endings were just absolutely fantastic. I
Yes.
absolutely loved Kamala being in like Nick Fury's spot, which is so perfect for her
That was
character because
hilarious.
she's such a fangirl already. To have her like doing that, like I know she enjoyed it as like a human being. Iman totally believe that Kamala as a character was just geeking out at being able to do that.
Yes.
And kind of step into Nick Fury's shoes there. Like that was just so cool.
Yeah.
And so much fun to see. And I wasn't expecting that. I knew they were obviously going to join all these characters somehow, but I didn't know exactly what way. And so just seeing like that was like, I don't know, it was really cool. And then obviously Kelsey Grammer back as Beast and Lashana Lynch as, I guess, is this Captain Marvel in the X-Men world? Is that what that is? She had some logo on her shirt. On her uniform. I didn't know that.
I think her name is Binary.
But yeah, seeing her again, that was such a cool way to do it. Like, oh, it's her mom. And then she's like, who are you? And like, that was really cool. And then like, oh my gosh, it's X-Men in the X Mansion somewhere underground. Like, dude, I could not be more excited. Like this was just as good as the Transformers Rise of the Beasts end credit scene reveal, but even better. I'm so excited. It's going to be so weird and interesting to see how they do X-Men and Kang at the same time, sort of. I don't know what they're going to do with that, but I'm so stoked.
Me too.
Yeah, same. Yeah, that was a great post-credit scene for sure. One of the most exciting by far. Both scenes, the end scene, recreating that Nick Fury moment with the new Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, was really fun. My headcanon is that Kamala Khan probably asked Nick Fury how he recruited Iron Man, and she just was like, "Oh, I'm going to do that."
Yes.
So yeah, that was a great moment, setting up the Young Avengers, which we've been waiting for. You know, I think they even mentioned, did you know Ant-Man has a daughter? So they'll bring her in, I'm sure.
That's what they said. I couldn't hear I couldn't understand what she said. It was like something like an A.
Yeah, they mentioned that, and so yeah, we've got a few young heroes that could join in, which would be really fun. But yeah, the X-Men moment. I mean, seeing Beast, like a fully rendered, fully CGI Beast with Kelsey Grammer voicing him. I don't know if he was on set or not, but it was just really, really, really cool. to get that moment, and the door with the X on it behind him, and the whole thing. It was just a great moment.
More excited than I was for the original at the end of Iron Man when Nick Fury walks out. Like, I think I'm more excited now than I was at that reveal.
Yeah, I think you might
maybe that's
be
just
right.
because of all the history built up. But
yeah,
man,
yeah, that's true. Yeah, we have so much history with the X-Men movies. So yeah, that's great. I'm very curious to see what they do. Let's discuss the future briefly. Here, I'm just going to go through what we have coming up in the rest of Phase 5 and Phase 6, what's been announced. And you guys just tell me what you're most excited for. We don't have time to talk about all these things, but just give me, a few that you're really, really looking forward to. We have What If Season 2, supposedly dropping around Christmas time this year, so coming up pretty soon. Then we have Echo. Echo is the spinoff of Hawkeye. That character coming back January 10th. That will drop. That is the first TVMA rated MCU series. It's supposed to focus less on the continuity, more on the characters. I think I heard it's supposed to be part of a new series called the Marvel Spotlight, which is a new kind of thing, kind of like they did Marvel Knights a while back, like Ghost Rider and all those movies were Marvel Knights. This is Marvel Spotlight, which is a new thing. It's going to be the kind of more mature, adult-oriented Marvel series and movies. So that's kind of interesting. Agatha, Darkhold Diaries, spinoff of WandaVision, with Catherine Hahn coming back to that role. We have Ironheart, the series, which is still set to come out. Dominic Thorne returning to that role that she originated in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Daredevil Born Again, which is going through a big overhaul. They shot, I think, like 5 or 6 episodes. Feige came in and was like, this isn't working, fired everybody, got all new writers, having to rewrite the whole show.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, that was a pretty big shakeup that happened there pretty recently. But Charlie Cox coming back, Vincent D'Onofrio, who will also have a role in the Echo series, which the trailer is out for that, by the way. But Daredevil Born Again, yeah, it's been delayed. There's no release date on it yet. Deadpool 3 is the next big movie that we have to look forward to, although it was delayed to July of 2024. So that is actually currently the only Marvel film set to release next year. Everything else was delayed.
Wow.
The writer strike just ended, so they're going to finally get back to work on these movies. But Captain America: Brave New World was bumped back to February of 2025. Right after that, we have Fantastic Four, which is currently untitled. I'm guessing it'll probably be like The Fantastic Four, or maybe they'll give it a subtitle. I don't know. But that's set for May 2nd, 2025. Thunderbolts is coming in July of 2025. That's kind of their Suicide Squad, essentially. It's kind of like the bad guys teaming up to do some good. Then we have Blade coming on November 6th, 2025. So 2025 is pretty busy. 4 films coming out that year. Then when we go into Phase 6, we know that there is a Wakanda series supposedly still in development. We don't know exactly what that is. We don't have many details on that. Spider-Man is getting his animated series called Freshman Year. They also announced they're doing Sophomore Year. So that's going to lead directly into where we meet him in Civil War, which should be fun. Then we have Marvel Zombies, a spinoff of What If, coming as well, animated series. Wonder Man is another live action series. They cast Yahya Abdul Mateen II from Aquaman. Many people know him as Black Manta. He's going to star in that show. Nova is supposedly in development. There's no director, writers, or cast for that yet. I Am Groot is getting a 3rd season. Vision Quest is a series that's going to follow White Vision from where we last saw him in WandaVision. And then the rest of the films that are all undated, I think, except for the Avengers movies. Armor Wars, which is the War Machine film, which was going to be a series, now a movie with Don Cheadle. The 4th Tom Holland Spider-Man film. Everyone wants that to happen, obviously, so they're busy at work on that. Shang-Chi is getting a sequel. X-Men, obviously, they're going to do some type of X-Men movie. Guardians of the Galaxy, that's a big question mark. There's been no official word on that, but we do have that new team that we could see in the future. Legendary Star-Lord actually is what I want to see. That's the movie that I think would be really interesting, seeing him kind of readjust to life on Earth. And I think that could be a really interesting story. And I know Chris Pratt would be game for that. And then, of course, Avengers: The Kang Dynasty and Avengers: Secret Wars. So a lot coming up, big stuff happening. Secret Wars being the kind of ultimate comic book story. If anyone knows that comic, it's literally like every Marvel hero fighting every Marvel villain. It's a huge, big story from the comics that I'm a big fan of. But what are you guys looking forward to? Ben, give us your thoughts on what the future is here.
As we know that next year, the only Marvel film that seems to be coming out theatrically is Deadpool 3. I am super excited. I heard it's going to bridge everything that 20th Century Fox has done and tie it into MCU multiverse in certain ways. I am so excited that they got Hugh Jackman to return as Wolverine, even though his bow out in Logan was impactful, and I thought it was a perfect ending to the character. But to see him return just to fight Deadpool and hopefully be one of the leaders in the upcoming Secret Wars movie is super exciting, and I cannot wait to see it. Comes out the weekend of my 26th, so I'm looking forward to seeing it then. So Deadpool 3 is definitely up there. I'm really looking forward to Echo. Echo looks really cool. I'm really happy based off the trailer they're actually going towards back to the Netflix roots with the gruesome Wilson Fisk. I'm really happy they're actually allowing blood, gore, corruption, just adult grown-up themes for that. And that will bleed into Daredevil Born Again, which I'm super excited about. I don't know what the mindset was when announcing that it's going to be 18 episodes long. I'm not sure that's a smart way to go, but hopefully it will be comprised of good storytelling and no fillers. Please, I pray to God there won't be any fillers with Daredevil Born Again, and hopefully that get the character right. Because so far, yes, his introduction with Spider-Man No Way Home was awesome. I loved his cameo. They actually had an extra scene with him in the extended cut of No Way Home, which I thought was really cool with him and Happy. Very funny scene. I highly recommend you check it out. And his moment in She-Hulk, even though I hate She-Hulk, his moment was okay. I will say I did like his scene with the yellow and red suit on. That was a cool look. It was very comic book accurate. I thought we'd never get to see that costume to life, so I'm happy that they were wanting to showcase all the different suits that Daredevil has worn throughout the comic book line. So, yes, great. I believe after Daredevil Born Again, that's going to bleed into Spider-Man 4. So, Spider-Man 4 could be about Tom Holland's Spider-Man coming across possibly Kingpin or the crime world of New York City, which I hope is true, which means it could be Spider-Man starting to become aware of the street heroes like Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and the Punisher. That would be cool. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if it's all going to lead to a Defenders story where they're all trying to take down the Kingpin, that would be great. So there's a lot to look forward to Spider-Man 4. The one new film project which excites me the most as of right now, even though Secret Wars is cool, I'm really looking forward to Fantastic Four. I've been wanting Fantastic Four to join the MCU for a very long time. I'm a big fan of the early 2000s films, even though I understand they're not great. It was a perfect cast, dude. I loved it. Ian Grufford, Jessica Alba, 100%. Chris Evans, and Michael Chiklis. Perfect cast for the team. Doctor Doom was so, but it still had fun and charm and family dynamics, and I hope they continue those things within this new Fantastic Four. I believe Matt Shankman, he was the director of all the episodes for WandaVision, he came out and said, hey, I'm taking a lot of inspiration from All Sunny in Philadelphia for this brand new Fantastic Four. Now people are speculating, what does he mean? Does he mean like the comedic Bond angle? We don't know. So next thing you know, when they announced it, I'm like, it's like you're going to cast Charlie Day as Reed Richards. And if that's going to be the case, I'm going to be kind of iffy about it. But yeah, we don't know. There's been different speculations on who the cast of the Fantastic Four is going to be. Me personally, I still think they should stick with John Krasinski. I think he'd be perfect as Reed Richards. You have my money right away. Unfortunately, I don't think that's the route Marvel wants to go. I'm hearing rumors about Jake Gyllenhaal, which I'm like, please no. I don't want Jake Gyllenhaal. He was okay, but he's Mysterio. Keep him as Mysterio, for crying out loud. So after that, King Dynasty and Secret Wars, it looks very promising. As long as they start to connect the dots from now on, I think we are in for a good future and a good end to this phase of Marvel, and perhaps the beginning of a brand new soft reboot for the MCU. We don't know. It's probably going to go that way based off how things are going with Marvel. Some people like other things compared to others. I'm sure by the end of this phase, Marvel's going to decide, we're going to create a brand new Earth with some familiar faces and some new faces. So who knows?
Great.
That's what I'm looking forward to the most in terms of Marvel.
Great stuff. All right, Josh, you're up.
I think maybe a couple things that I'm most looking forward to, kind of like what you were saying, Ben, was Echo and Daredevil Born Again. When they announced Echo at first, I was like, you're going to do a show on this character that we don't know much about. I don't know. It was just like a lot of like uncertainty. But then the trailer came out and my goodness, I couldn't be more excited for the show. like you said, been so excited that they got that angle going with kind of going back to the Netflix series with the level of violence and stuff. Seeing Kingpin fully fleshed out, I guess. Super excited for Deadpool 3. The writer strike and the actor strike, I think that was actually a good thing because a lot of people have superhero fatigue. So I think spacing it out a little bit is really helpful. And hopefully they see that and then maybe space out the next year a little bit instead of jam packing it with 4 films. Yeah, I don't know. It looks great for everything we got coming up, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Great stuff, guys. This was an epic episode. We had a epic task to undertake here with the entire MCU timeline, and we have come through. We have come out on the other end, and really appreciate you guys joining me for this one. Make sure you guys leave a comment below. We want to know what your favorite phase is of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Tell us some of your favorite movies, favorite characters. We want to have a whole discussion about Marvel down in the comments. So leave a like, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notified of all our videos, and we'll see you next time right here on The Real World.